Okay. Good evening and welcome to the July 29th Glendale City Council meeting. Can we have roll call, please?
Council members: Devine.
Here.
Friedman.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Mayor Sinanian.
Here. Today's flag salute will be led by Council Member Paul Devine.
Thank you. Please rise. Please say with me, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation. On July 27, 1953, after 3 years of intense fighting, 36,516 American lives lost and countless Korean lives, an armistice was signed, bringing an end to the war in Korea. Veterans of this war, along with those who served in our nation in the Second World War, are part of a generation of Americans who we have named the greatest. Today, 61 years later, we pray and remember the individuals who served in and were touched by this conflict, Americans, servicemen and women, as well as the countless Koreans who lost so much during this forgotten war. U.S. General Douglas MacArthur, who commanded the UN forces, remarked that, quote, "The soldier above all others prays for peace, for it is the soldier who must suffer and bear the deepest wounds and scars of war," end quote. Let us join with our servicemen and women today for their prayers of peace, for not only those who served in the past, but for those who still serve away from their homes and their families in various places of conflict. We pray for their swift and safe return to their families and loved ones, just as we pray for the souls of over 6,000 American men and women whose lives were lost in Iraq and Afghanistan. We pray and ask that we are granted the wisdom and strength to eschew conflict and embrace peace, tonight and always. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. May we have the report, please?
The agenda for the July 29, 2014 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, July 24, 2014 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
What's next?
Next item under presentation and appointments at 3A is the agenda preview for the meetings of Tuesday, August 5th, 2014.
Ms. Beers?
Mayor Sinanian, members of the City Council, for August 5th, 2014, we have no business agenda items for the Glendale Housing Authority, and I'd also like to remind everyone that that evening City Council meeting will be dark based on the fact that we will have National Night Out activities all around the city, and Chief Castro will be talking about that a little later on this evening.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. What's next, Mr. Clerk?
3B is a presentation to Rotary Jewel City Ride beneficiaries, Homeland YMCA, Walk Bike Glendale, and GYA.
Hello? Yes.
We have our group here.
Excellent.
Mayor Sinanian, members of the council, staff. My name is Elizabeth Manasserian, and I'm the president of Glendale Rotary Club. We meet every Thursday at noon at Embassy Suites, and all of you are invited to attend any of our meetings whenever you wish, and so is the public, actually. I'm pleased to announce that our second annual Jewel City Fun and Fitness Ride took place on May 18th of this year at the Verdugo Park. And it was a success with the participation of close to 100 riders altogether, and many different Glendale organizations and members of our community participated. I want to take this opportunity to thank council members Ara Najarian and Paula Devine for attending this event and cheering on the riders. I also want to thank our partners Glendale Sunrise Rotary, Glendale Moonlight Rotary, Burbank Rotary Club, and Walk by Glendale. Many thanks to our major sponsors, Glendale Adventist Medical Center, Beige Capital Management, Sam Carvajal, and Dr. Brian Berg for supporting our event. Also thanks to Onik Bolanikian, Laura Dalian, and Monique Morris, and the staff of City of Glendale Community Services and Parks for arranging all the details and taking care of everything at the park. Most importantly, I wanted to thank our immediate past president, Natalie Camora, who couldn't be here, unfortunately, tonight, members of our committee who worked diligently day in and day out to make this happen, and all the residents of Glendale who came out, supported our fundraiser, had fun, and with their participation benefited great organizations who help the youth and children of our community. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Larry Tyson, who's the president of our foundation, and Mr. Stephen Beisch, who was also the chair of the committee and the vice president of our club, who will do the presentation to all our beneficiaries. And our beneficiaries are Hominid Men, represented by Savada Hamelian here, and we will have YMCA represented by George Cycley here, and Glendale Youth Alliance represented by, where's Karine? Karine, she's hiding over there, Karine Gregorian, and also Walk by Glendale by Martha Sensel. So go on. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, council members. Thank you, Elizabeth. On behalf of Larry Tyson and myself, we have 4 checks to present. We have 3 beneficiaries of the event, and they were, as Elizabeth said, Glendale Youth Alliance, getting $5,000. We have another beneficiary, Hominid Men, another $5,000. And the YMCA of Glendale. And finally, we want to provide some support to our really co-sponsor, a lot of the folks that provided a lot of the legwork, a lot of the man hours for the Jewel City Bike Ride, and that's the Walk by Glendale. Thank you so much. And we'll probably have that event the last Sunday in April next year, and look forward to your participation in that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And the only person who wasn't introduced was Ryberg on the walk bike. Okay, you get honorable mention.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Manasserian. Next.
At 3C is Mayor's commendation to Gabriela Campo for being one of 20 student artists chosen as scholars who went to the White House, met First Lady Michelle Obama, and performed at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts.
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to thank you all so much for this honor. Thank you, Paula Devine. Thank you, Mayor Sinanian. Just thank you so much. This is such an honor. I'm so proud to be a Glendalian.
Great. Well, good job. I think it's a great honor to meet the First Lady and also to perform at the Kennedy Center. That's like the top of the line. I don't know if there's anything beyond that. So, and you achieved that. Well, the President. That's right. Yeah. First Lady is more important. Yeah. But you achieved that, so great. Was Glendale mentioned at any point when you were there?
Yeah.
There you go.
Was definitely
That's it. Mission accomplished. Thank you. We covered all the bases. So thank you. Hopefully, you have more successes in your life, and no doubt you will in the future. And we've prepared a little commendation for you, which I'd like to read out, and I'll ask Councilmember Paula Devine to present it to you. Presented to Gabriela Campo. Congratulations on being the recipient of the U.S. Presidential Scholar Medal. Your passion, drive, and dedication have paved the way for your future in theater and music. The same dedication has earned you such a wonderful accolade very early in your journey. As one of 20 student artists, your trip to the White House, your performance at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, and the beginning of your studies in the fall at Pace University in New York City is a testament to a bright future ahead. On behalf of the City of Glendale, I wish you many more successes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if I may add,
Of course.
10 years ago, Gabriella? About 10 years ago, when Glendale first started Relay for Life, and I was on that committee, and we were looking for a young girl to sing at the candlelight, the Luminarius, I believe. And Gabriella's mom said, "Oh, my daughter sings." And so how old were you then, about 10?
Yeah.
10 years old, and now here she is. So I'm so proud, and as we all are, and everyone in Glendale is, of this great accomplishment. So thank you.
What's next, Mr. Clerk?
Item 4 on the agenda is consent items. The following are routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before a motion is proposed.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull E, and I'll move the remainder of the consent calendar.
Mr. Weaver, you're pulling item 4A?
E.
4E. Okay,
4E.
very well. Do we have a motion?
We need a second.
Oh, is there a
Pull
second?
it?
Second the
Oh, yeah, the remainder.
We have a motion and a second for the remainder of the consent
Yeah.
items.
Yes. Roll call, please.
Council members Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian.
Yes. Okay. Item 4E.
4E is General Manager of Glendale Water and Power regarding recommendation to support the Bay Delta Conservation Plan, specifically the State of California's preferred alternative 4 in the draft environmental impact statement to improve water supply, reliability, and environmental restoration. E1 is a resolution of support.
Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, sir. I would defer to any question that Mr. Weaver has. If you
Well,
like.
I asked to be pulled because I'm voting against it. And the reason is, this is a very complex $25 billion project that is being pushed by the governor. The same thing as the high-speed rail, that is billions of dollars. The state is in debt. They can say they have a balanced budget, but they have a lot of IOUs out there. And I tried to learn a little more on that Delta project. I followed it in the newspapers over time. But there's a lot more to know about it before I can. This is sitting on the consent calendar. Just vote it and gone. I don't know. I'm voting for a alternative 4. I know nothing. Nothing like that should be coming before the council with lack of knowledge of what we're voting on, especially something that is proposed to be $25 billion. I understand it's on the Delta, and you want to save a few fishies up there. That's fine. But if you have read the papers over the years, the delivery system from that neck of the woods to down to Southern California go through a series of levees in the San Joaquin Valley. That system of levees is defective, needs to be replaced. If an earthquake were to hit, saltwater intrusion would come into that system, and from what I've read, it'd be 2 years before we would get any new water in Southern California. So before you go up to the Delta and try to save a fish in the ecosystem, I think the money is more well spent on the levee system from there to Southern California. Because we know we're going to have an earthquake. We know it, and it's going to be massive. I don't want to see those levees fail. So with that, I pulled it so I can vote no.
Ms. Friedman?
Yeah, it is a very complicated issue, and we did have a presentation by MWD on this. When was it?
I think it was last year.
Last year. You're absolutely right about the earthquake threat to the Delta. Part of the big reason to do the tunnels is because it would take the water from above the Delta so that if you had an earthquake, you would still have a supply of fresh water. And even though it is an expensive price tag, nobody out there, and I mean nobody, is suggesting that you can get away with not doing something. And when you run the analysis on the other options that we have for reliable water, things like desalinization, reclaim water, all of these other options, they're actually quite a bit more expensive than the tunnel price. So believe it or not, it's the cheaper option. Desal is very, very expensive. If we don't do anything, we run the risk of, as Mr. Weaver said, having an interrupted water supply. And certainly as it becomes more and more difficult to get water here because of the issues in the Delta and the drought, the price of water, as we know from tonight, we're dealing with water rates, will continue to go up because it's a scarcer and scarcer commodity. In the winter, when there's plenty of water coming down from the mountains, that water has to go to the ocean instead of coming to Southern California because of the fish and the ecological restrictions. So the other benefit of the tunnel is that you capture that water, which is not needed for the ecology of the delta. It's water that really just gets pumped to the ocean because there's too much of it. That water can be captured and put into storage. Whereas right now we can't capture much of that. So at the time when you have the most water, we're pumping into the ocean. And the time when you have drought, when we can pump, there's nothing to pump. Because then you need to keep the water in the delta. One other comment about the delta, the levees are very old and failing, but there's a lot of evidence that even fixing the levees is not going to save the delta because there's subsidence, there are man-made islands that are sinking, literally just sinking no matter what you do with the levees. There's a lot of issues up there that make even fixing the levees something that is not a sustainable solution. So I will be supporting this motion. I'd say I know quite a bit about this issue. I'm not an expert by any means, but I serve as our representative on the MWD board. And Southern California is pretty united that this is a fix that we need. We're in a desperate situation for water. This doesn't allow us by law to take any more water than we're allowed to take now. It just makes it to where we can take the water when the water's there, which we can't do right now. So it's a fix that I think is prudent. There are other alternatives. They tend to be more expensive alternatives. I think it's prudent to support this now, and it's symbolic in a way. We're not going to get to vote. The governor's not going to call Glendale and say, I'm whatever you say, I'll do, and neither will the legislature. But I think we do need to support this option at this point, so I'll be voting yes.
Mr. Mayor, just yes, be clear, as a civil engineer, I've never voted on something where I didn't study it and understand the alternatives and what's proposed. To put it on the consent calendar and expect me to make an intelligent vote, absolutely impossible. Maybe if I had all the information, I would change my mind, but I don't. So it's inappropriate at this time. Thank you.
At the very end. Do we have a motion?
I'll move the item.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
No.
Mayor Sinanian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item at 5 is City Council and staff comments.
Ms. Friedman?
Nope, no comments.
No comments. Mr. Najarian? No comments. Yes, Mr. Weaver.
Okay. This is a health issue. People are wondering my makeup tonight. It's a warning. I spent 30, 40 years working around my house in the yard, building things, without any SPF protection, without any shirt on, without any hat or dark glasses, whatever. I've now had 1, 2, 3, at least 4 melanoma skin cancers on my face. 2 more were found last week. A warning out there, if you're fair-skinned, go see a dermatologist at least once every 6 months. Do yourself the favor, because ignored, it can kill you. If it's discovered, absolutely no problem in curing you. But it's those that say, I don't have anything. I paid the price again. That'll make 7. So I'm just trying to put out a health message to everybody. I'm not Dr. Oz, but what the heck. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Yes, Ms. Devine?
Yes, I had the honor of attending the 3rd annual commemoration of the Comfort Women Day at the Alex Theater on Sunday. Congressman Ed Royce was there and Congresswoman Judy Chu, along with many Korean delegates. And I just want to mention the program was absolutely incredible, the drummers, the dancers, the acting. But the one thing that impressed me so much about that whole evening was the gratitude that they feel for this city council that passed the resolution, I guess it was, to acknowledge the Comfort Women and Comfort Women Day. They are very thankful for the community for accepting it, and of course all of us that want to end violence against women and the abuse of women. And unfortunately, when there is a war, women tend to be the collateral damage. And so I just wanted to pass along the fact that they are so grateful to everyone in this community for that statue and for the commemoration. And the other thing I did yesterday was a lot of fun. I attended the Parks and Open Space golf tournament at Oakmont Country Club. I understand some of the city employees played, but didn't quite make that
council
cut.
members played.
So, and council members played as well and didn't quite make that cut.
Evidence
Sorry
that
about
we
that.
work all day.
But anyway, it was very nice, and I want to just congratulate the Parks and Open Space Foundation and, of course, our Parks and Recreation Department for putting it on. It was quite a wonderful day and a great tournament, and congratulations to Dottie Sharkey and Rick Dinger for being at the helm of that event. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Devine. So first thing I'd like to nominate or renominate Sam Manukian to the Civil Service Commission. I would like to nominate Arthur Charchian to the Design Review Board. And I would also like to join in your comments regarding the third annual Comfort Women Commemoration event that took place on Sunday night. It was a very heartwarming event indeed, and what was very special about that event is that 3 days prior to that, and you were there, Councilmember Devine, we had two Halmonese survivor comfort women at the Adult Recreation Center for a very short lunch meeting, a very nice, quaint meeting, during which each of them spoke candidly about the horrors that they had lived through, and really gave a human face to the suffering that had taken place by hundreds of thousands of victims of the crime committed against women during World War II by the Imperial Japanese government. And again, on the issue of the third annual Glendale Golf Tournament, along with City Manager Scott Ochoa, the Lanza fame, was it Dan Bell? Was it?
Did you golf?
I did.
You
Yeah.
didn't win, though. I saw the
I did
first
not.
place.
No, I did not.
What
win.
happened?
Well, I didn't win.
You just didn't want to. You didn't want to look like, you didn't want to show off.
Exactly. It was modesty that kicked in, but it was a great way to promote our parks and open space. Apparently, this year's tournament was bigger than the two previous years, and that's the tendency we want to develop. Bigger, better, more people participating. And although I couldn't make it to the last stage in the ceremony yesterday evening, I did see the photo of the winner. It was a very young man. Very impressive that he beat out all those experienced golfers, and there were some very experienced golfers there. Anyway, why am I going on with this? I just want to turn you on to it. Want to encourage for you all to participate, or everyone out there watching on TV. It's a good time, and it's for a great cause.
It was hell getting around the windmills.
That's right.
And if they don't want to do, if they don't golf, they can always do the bike ride for Rotary, which is excellent. That's a lot of fun too.
Very good. Very good. And then a last issue during my swearing in mayor as mayor ceremony, I stated that I'd like to hold neighborhood meetings. I understand there are some impediments or there's some limitations that the charter provides or the charter imposes on us. I still think perhaps we can be creative and maybe call it something other than a city council meeting, or pick certain items that are specific to certain geographic parts of the city of Glendale, because I think it's important not only to insist that our residents come to City Hall, but City Hall to go to them. And I'd like to ask if there's some kind of a substantive report on how we can make sure that far north Glendale, at Montrose, I don't know how far we can reach Emerald Isle, or all those corners of Glendale that feel isolated from us or are geographically removed from downtown are getting their fair
Access to the city council.
FaceTime with
Yes.
city council. Yes.
Yes, sir. As you indicate, the charter precludes us from having council meetings, but we can have council ostensibly forums. and to be out among the community. I would defer to City Attorney if it would be the full council or subcommittees of the council, so that we don't have a Brown Act meeting and thus a council meeting. But the idea being that we would have, as you suggest, a series of neighborhood-specific topics. So it isn't just come to the mic and talk about anything under the sun. These are issues that we understand from the neighborhood that they would like to talk about. So that is being assembled now and will be presented back to you for a series of sessions come the fall.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. And last thing, we have our police chief here, Bob Castro, would like to speak to us about National Night Out. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Next Tuesday, as you know, our council meeting will be dark so that you can participate in the 30th Annual National Night Out. And National Night Out was started as a way to designate an evening where communities could come together and work collaboratively with city government and with specifically their police and fire departments to find ways to address crime and quality of life issues. Also, one of the main components of it was to get neighbors out so that they could meet other people in their neighborhood. As schedules became very busy and people traveled to work, we've started to see that neighborhoods became more enclosed and people didn't know each other as they did many years ago. Well, 30 years later, that is even more true today. We find that neighbors sometimes don't even know other people on their same street, and when issues or problems happen, we find as a police department, we go do follow-up, and the neighbor will tell us, I did see a strange car in that driveway, and there happened to be a burglary there, but I didn't call because I just didn't know them that well. I didn't know if it perhaps was a family member or a friend I wasn't aware of. So National Night Out allows communities to take a night to get outside of your home and actually talk to your neighbors. We bring kind of city government to you by visiting the different groups that have them. Right now, there are 38 designated neighborhood watch events planned in this city, and we can have many, many more. If you go to the city's website, the city has www.glendale.no for National Night Out.org. You can sign up your neighborhood, and we will put you on an interactive map, and then we will make efforts through our police personnel who will be out all evening, including myself, to visit the various neighborhood watch functions that are going on and the National Night Out functions that are going on, and listen to people, share ideas about how we can work collaboratively to reduce crime in our community. And more importantly, one of the main things I like about this evening is we use it as a way to try to find different ways that people can give back to us. There are so many people in this community that have various skills and life experiences that are kind of looking for a way to give back. And at this time, with government resources being stretched so thin, this is an excellent opportunity for us to reach out, remind the members of this community, if they have some time and they have the will and the drive to want to give back, there are so many different things that they can do to help the various city departments, and volunteers really will allow us to continue to provide a high level of customer service, as well as ensure that we are absolutely in touch with the needs of our community and the various geographical areas of this city and what each individual area needs or wants from their various city governments. So I encourage the community to go to the city's website. If you have, or you can call the police department, and we can help you organize an event in your neighborhood, and we will try to make it out to each of the different events, to stop by at least and say hello and listen to some of the comments that the various members of our community have, and talk about some of the services that we can provide so that neighborhoods can work together and can help us to keep Glendale one of the safest communities in this country. So I look forward to next Tuesday, seeing some of you out there. If there's any information that you need, I will be forwarding a list to you so that you can see the different events, and we can have some discussions perhaps about maybe dividing up some of the different regions of the city that you may want to visit and interact with some of the different community members that are holding these special events. So again, next Tuesday night, we encourage everyone to turn on their porch light. That is one of the things that kind of represents that we are a community, we are looking out for each other, and it kind of shines a light on some of the things that make life in our community challenging when people come in here and try to commit crime or do things that take away from the quality of life of this incredible city. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Yes,
Yes.
Mr. Vine?
Chief Castro, are you going to be using this occasion for the education component for your pedestrian and cycling safety?
Yes, as we go out
Education?
and we meet, we will provide different literature on different issues, talking about, home safety for burglaries, things to look out for, what neighbors can do, encourage people to call. And our second major component is also talk about pedestrian, driver safety, and bicycle safety in the community, and also handing out some of our material that we have, which are like a reflective wristbands, some of our lights, and some of the things that we have to keep the dialogue alive, that we can prevent and reduce the number of crimes in our community by working together, and we can also reduce and eliminate injury and fatal accidents by improving our driving, bicycling, and pedestrian habits.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. And I hope everyone comes out. I certainly will on Tuesday night. I do have one last item that I'd like to read into the record. Today we're going to adjourn in the memory of Ralph Walrath. And it is with great sadness that we announce that staff member Ralph Walrath passed away on Tuesday, July 22nd, 2014 at the age of 98. Ralph was the oldest city employee still working. He became a volunteer at the Chevy Chase Library in 1980 after retiring from Lockheed, where he worked for 41 years. He became a paid staff member in 1983 with a starting wage of $3.35 an hour. His work included driving the department's delivery van, shelving books, and later delivering mail to staff at the Central Library. Ralph's family moved to Burbank, where he was 7 years old. He would often take the red car to Glendale to watch movies and was in the audience at the Alex Theater the first week it opened in 1925. He enrolled at Glendale Junior College in 1933 and was in the last class to graduate from its old location on Harvard Street, now the site of the Central Library. Library arts and culture staff knew that when he came to work, he would be on time and ready to work. He will be greatly missed for his honesty and his sense of humor. He celebrated his 98th birthday this year on January 17th with children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. So we will adjourn in his memory. Thank you. Next item.
Mayor and Council, item 6 is community event announcements.
Yes, and we have some speaking cards, and we'll start with Rachel Ryan of Salvation Army, followed by Sharon Townsend. Please state your name for the record. 3 minutes.
My name is Rachel Ryan, and I'm with the Salvation Army Glendale Corps. For those of you guys who don't know, probably most of you do, we are located over at 320 West Windsor Road. We're right next to the Domino's, behind the little food pantry there. Even though we're kind of a small location, we have a lot going on, and we're expanding fairly quickly. And I'm here today because I'm going to talk about what I'm doing at the Salvation Army. I'm brand new to the staff. I'm also brand new to Glendale, which is exciting. It was kind of neat to be a transplant here and so quickly get invested into my community and doing things that are really going to make a difference in the city here. So I'm excited about that. But I got hired on to become the volunteer and events coordinator. And for me, that is kind of a big job because we're a small nonprofit, but we have a lot of things happening. We have our food pantry, we have our housing services, we have the Zone, which is an after-school program, and we have a couple of different family services. So we have all kinds of things happening every single day that we need volunteers for. So I'm going to be around trying to recruit businesses, individuals, other nonprofits to kind of give us a hand, to help us out with all the things we do. So coming up just this week, we're excited. The Kiwanis Club of Glendale gave us some money to be taking 25 kids over to Target, and we need volunteers to help them shop for back-to-school items. So it's stuff like that that's really fun, that gets people invested in our programs, our kids, our services, but is a joint community effort that we're excited about, and my role in that is helping to get volunteers. The other thing that I'm doing is events, and events are kind of where my passion is. That's my background. And with events, it's kind of a neat way for us to get our name out there, to get people involved in the Salvation Army, both with learning about our services, but also financially and supporting the things we do. And so right now we have quite a few events you might know about, including our Kettle Kickoff, which is our big breakfast we do every year. And that one's going to be very exciting. We're still waiting on a location this year, but we have so many people that we're kind of bursting at the seams. So we might be moving to a new spot. And with that, we're going to be having tree raffles and a breakfast and some really amazing speakers going to talk about what the Salvation Army has done in their lives. So wanted to let you know about that event today. And also, we have a few events coming up, like our Harvest Festival and our Thanksgiving Christmas feed that I'll be working on. But part of my job is to be getting more events out there and more stuff happening at the center. So we'll be putting on more events starting in 2014. So we want you to be looking forward to all of those things. And the last final thing is getting the word out. So that's kind of one reason why I'm here today, is to talk about all the things we're doing, but also to do more marketing so the community knows about our social services, and doing that through all the kind of usual young, fun ways of Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, all of that. So we're hoping that you'll see the Salvation Army more and more online and in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon Townsend, followed by Steve Pierce.
Hi, thank you. I'm Sharon Townsend, and I'm here on behalf of Glendale Healthy Kids and Senator Carol Liu's office with my cohort here, Talene. And first of all, Mayor Sinani, I just want to congratulate you on joining Rotary, the good club in Glendale. Thank you. Depression is the most common mental health disorder in the United States among teenagers and adults. Teenage depression can adversely affect school, work performance, impair family relationships, and aggravate the intensity of other health-related problems like obesity and asthma. Some reports indicate that 1 in 5 children have some kind of psychological, behavioral, or emotional issues, whereas 1 in 10 may have a significant emotional problem. 1 out of 8 teenagers have suffered and been identified as having depression, and approximately 20% of teenagers suffer from teen depression before they even reach adulthood. Between 20 to 50% of adolescents are affected by depression, and they have a family history of depression or some other mental disorder. Depressed teens are more likely to have difficulty at schools and at jobs, and to struggle with future relationships. Teens with major depression seem to catch physical ailments more and have more problems and more frequently than other teenagers. And in the United States alone, about 5,000 teens who have expressed depression commit suicide every single year. 1 million teens across the world die by suicide every single year. That's 1 suicide every 40 seconds for our teens. In the United States, 1 in 12 teens have attempted suicide, and the rate of death by suicide for boys is 4 times greater than that of girls. Between the ages of 10 and 14, the rate of suicide in teens is nearly 1 person in every 100,000 people, and is the 3rd leading cause of death in teens. Most teenage depression can be effectively treated with medication, psychotherapy, or combined treatments, and children are really more likely to react to treatment when they get it early on in the course of their life. 60% of adults and almost 1/2 of youth with a mental illness have received no health services in the previous year. For the past 9 months, Glendale Healthy Kids has worked closely with Senator Liu's office and her staff in regarding the issue of mental health and how it's impacted our own community. Darrell Steinberg, at time the Senate Pro Tenant, came down in the fall and met with teachers and the district administration at CV regarding this issue. And upon leaving, he talked with Senator Carol Liu, and he charged us with finding an effective way to navigate the system, bring about change, healing, and to help our students, our parents, and our community. Based upon the business model of Glendale Healthy Kids, we are bringing together over 40 stakeholders in a collaborative effort. These stakeholders are NBC, Bloomingdale's, all 3 hospitals, UCLA, Pacific Clinics, Ascensia, the city, Foothill Family Services, and other nonprofits in Glendale. We want to bring about change. We want to bring about mandates, and eventually we want to affect state policy and even national policy. The Mental Health Collaborative has a mission promoting mental wellness and recovery through education, advocacy, and giving hope and preserving lives.
Thank you. Talene, you have comments?
Very brief comments. Good evening, Mayor Sinanian and council members. Since Senator Steinberg's meeting in the district, our office has met with several departments dedicated to mental health to better understand the needs and how to address the ongoing mental health crisis. We feel the current business model used by Glendale Healthy Kids and Essentia are truly programs that work in their effort of outreach and support. We'll support these programs in the hopes of seeing them become leading programs on mental health, which can be implemented in our other cities. Education regarding mental health and cross-collaboration among organizations and communities is what will help us achieve the results that we need. Together, we believe we can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Devine?
I'd just like to comment and congratulate and give kudos to Sharon as CEO of Glendale Healthy Kids for your proactive, I may be a bit prejudiced, but your proactive role in treating mental health, especially in our teens, and thanks to Senator Carol Liu's office as well for taking an active step in this issue. Thank you both.
Thank you. Steve Pierce, followed by Leon Mayer.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Steve Pierce. I'm the Communications Administrator for the Montrose Shopping Park Association. And this is a kind of exciting time for us because we're going to have our 5th annual Montrose Film Fest. And this year, which is going to be August 22nd and 23rd, we are going to be honoring Steven Spielberg. And we're going to be showing E.T. on Friday night. And on Saturday night, we're going to be showing Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is all free, so we're asking everyone in Glendale who is able to come up to Montrose and see this. This is a free event. Free popcorn. It's all about families and all about kids. We have music, live music, starting at about 6:15. The first group on Friday night is the group called the Subs, and they're sort of regulars at the Montrose Harvest Market on Sundays. But this group is phenomenal. They sound like original artists, and they do all of the songs from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and you name it, and it sounds original. So it's fantastic. On Saturday night, we're going to have the Maestros there. It's a rock band composed of people about my age, and they still can rock. So that's all good. And then the nice part about it, too, is we're going to be showing Looney Tune cartoons each night. We also have a student film fest, and we're going to announce a winner on Saturday night, and the winner will receive a $300 scholarship. So what I'm asking students in Glendale to do is to contact me. You can contact me at my phone number, which is 818-259-5195, or email me, KS Pierce, that's K as in Karen, S as in Steve, Pierce, Pierce at charter.net, and let me know if you're interested in being a part of our student film festival. The films need to be 10 minutes, no more than 10 minutes in length, and they will be reviewed by a committee that we will have, and they must be family-oriented, so they can't be off the cuff. They have to be family-oriented, and that's our only criteria. So this is a free event. It's going to be a fun event. The Prom Plus kids that everyone knows about, they actually go out and they run, take an order for food, and they'll run to the local restaurants around, get your order, bring it back to you, and you never have to leave your seat. We also have classic cars cruising around Montrose that night, and it's just a great fun-filled event. So thank you very much. And then I want to also remind you, as my role as communications administrator, every Sunday the Montrose Harvest Market. We're back in the 2300 block, back in the 2200 block this week. So come on down every Sunday. It starts at 9 o'clock, and it's just a great event to be at in Montrose. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. Leon Mayer. 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor Sinanian, members of the council and staff. My name is Leon Mayer, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the Friends of the Library, and the Brand Associates. That's from the Brand Museum. And we have a film, too, we're going to show. We're not going to show it before the 14th of August. We want to make sure that we jive with Montrose on this. So on the 14th of August at the Glendale Library at 7 o'clock, we're going to have a film called Citizen Tanui. Citizen Tanui is a documentary, and it's been done and filmed by director Robert Hostings. Robert Hostings is a Glendale resident. And the musical for this film is also local. It's by Stephen James Taylor from the Disney Imagineering. And he's done the music on this. And the film is a very interesting, uniquely bringing history to life for 8 ethnically diverse Torrance, California high school students. And they're researching one of their alumnus. And the alumnus is Ted Tenuian. He happens to be from Torrance, but the director is from Glendale, and we'll accept the Glendale film from the Glendale producer. And so they helped put together the background of this. And interesting enough, when Ted Tenuian was a Japanese American, he went into the Army. His mother and father went into Manzanera to one of these detention camps after World War II started with the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And so that in itself is interesting. And the students are able to put together as best they can how the feelings of Americans and Japanese changed as a result of what the 442nd Regimental Combat Unit, made up of just about all Japanese, their wonderful war record, how that set the scene for racial relations to start to change in America. And they also did the same for the Tuskegee Airmen and so forth. So that's the backdrop of the film. If I could have a couple minutes to talk about
2 minutes.
Ted Tenuian. Pardon?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Thank you. I'll take that. Ted Tenuian was born in Torrance, went to school there, was a pretty good athlete in school, and thereafter, after Pearl Harbor, he joined the Army, joined the 442nd Combat Regiment. And is there anybody who's not heard of the 442nd, all the more reason to come to the event on Thursday, August 14th. But the 442nd became famous in World War II for all its acts of valor. And this is all part of the film. And just as a point of interest, as I looked into this as we decided to do the film, I said, what about Glendale? Did they have any Japanese-American soldiers who were with the 442nd? And there were. And if you go to the our memorial right outside City Hall, there's a memorial. A name on the memorial is Soka Munamori. Soda Munamori was the first 442nd man to get the Congressional Medal of Honor. And there's places all over the city, not Glendale, but all over the county. And even in Italy, they did a statue for Soda Munamori. And so here's your chance to step back in the history with all the things happening today. Here's a chance to look at something that made a little sense from our standpoint. And so I urge you to come. It's free, 7 o'clock, August 14th. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, next item.
Next item number 7 is under adoption of ordinances. 7A is ordinance amending chapters 13.04, 13.08, 13.12, 13.16, and 13.28 of Glendale Municipal Code 1995 relating to Glendale Water and Power water rates and charges. This was introduced on July 22nd, 2014 by Councilmember Weaver. And I should also mention that we received 34 protest letters in regards to this item. And if I may go on, at 7A1 is the resolution establishing water rates for Glendale Water Power customers. 2 is a resolution establishing water rates for Glendale Water Power customers with a 4.444% annual increases. 3 is a resolution establishing water rates for Glendale Water Power customers and delaying the imposition of any applicable drought rate for a period of 6 months from the effective date of said new water rates. 4 is a resolution establishing water rates for GWP customers with 4.444% annual increases and delaying the imposition of any applicable drought rate for a period of 6 months from the effective date of said new water rates. 5 is a resolution authorizing the calculation and issuance of fire line overcharges. That is all under.
So how do we handle this? Should we go one by one, or?
Well, it's council's pleasure. You have the one resolution that is the rate structure. You have another that is the rate plan, meaning the increases, the establishment of the drought rates, the suspension of the drought rates, the fire line refund. If it pleases the council, we can give you a very brief recap. I don't believe in the time since last meeting to today we've received any new information based on all that you heard from the public hearing last week, but it's council's pleasure.
I would like you to give an overview, but specifically I want you to address a very fundamental issue, which I think is, for me personally, as to how I'm going to decide on this, is crucial. As all my colleagues know, we received some emails raising issues related to the water fee increase. One of the emails specifically from Bob Getz stated that if we add all the water fee increases from 2011 until if we were to effectuate the 4444 plan, it would be a total of 40% increase over a 7-year period. And this is specifically as to single-family homes. Now, is that or is that not a case? And underlying that issue is, again, something that I thought we cleared up, but I don't have a clear understanding at this point. Have the fees levied from our single-family residences since 2011, have the water fees gone up? Have people been paying more from 2011 to 2014 for their water? And I know that the answer may vary as to what kind of a residence or what kind of a facility it is, building it is. Specifically with single-family residents, and then we can go to the rest.
Well, and anticipating those two issues in particular, if you'd like, I promise you I won't show you the full 40 slides, but I think there's a handful, just several, that may help tell that story. Because the short answer is no, I don't believe it isn't the 40% increase. I'm not sure how that number was derived, but we can show you what we have. And then with respect to the original rate plan, the rate plan in 2012 was implemented. The first year saw, for average single-family residences, a very slight decrease, effectively the same rate, and then very small increases going forward. Our problem, in a nutshell, is that the rate increase that actually materialized was not the rate increase that was approved and anticipated vis-a-vis the Wildan error with respect to the calculation of those tiers. Right. People were, our single-family customers in particular, were operating in tiers 1 and 2 and into 3 and never making it up into tiers 4 and 5 because Wildan effectively calculated by a 2-month data and use that in setting those the monthly tiers. We reset your water bill effectively every month. So that way, if you have a pool and you fill that pool in the first month, you aren't paying for it for the entire billing period of 2 months. And so what ends up happening is if you extrapolate that out, they were thinking that people would be getting into those high 3rd, 4th, and 5th tiers, and in fact, they were not getting into those 3rd, 4th, 5th tiers, which is kind of the anchor of that single-family part of the rate structure. So the rate increase was implemented. Rates ultimately did go up, did not go up in a manner that was anticipated and approved and considered by the council.
Okay. So, and how much increase was approved for the first 3 years of the 2011-2012 plan?
The rate plan contemplated a 2-2-4-5 increase. So the first year was implemented, I believe, in the spring of 12. In January of 13, the next two. The 4% was January of 14.
And we never got to 5.
And we have thus suspended rate 5.
That was Wildan's plan, right? That was the increase. I'm sorry. That was the plan adopted by City Council based on Wildan's COSA.
Based on the Wildan COSA.
But in actuality, that didn't happen. What happened? How much did, in actuality, single-family residents' water bills go up? How much percentage-wise?
I can show you on this slide because I think that will help illustrate it. So, Michael, if you can put those slides up for me. Okay, just to refresh, what you see here is what we contemplated as part of the COSA. Staff was recommending 55444. Council, in preparing for the Prop 218 notice that basically sets the ceiling for any rate consideration, said no, that was too high. We went with the 5444. What Council has contemplated and seemed to be developing majority support for last week was the 4444 right here. And you can see how that does provide some pay-go capital, meaning the customary types of capital investments that we would make on a year-to-year basis would be covered not using bond funding, that our net income starts to, in essence, move in the right direction, and the cash reserves, which had been negative beginning at the start of this last in the 2011 fiscal year, where we were in excess of $20 million negative cash, that we were able to reduce, and finally by the end of this proposed rate plan, you will have positive cash reserves of $4.4 million. Not the 11.3 that is in the policy, but 4.4, which is obviously much better than where we are today. So, single family. In 1011, the actual average single family rate, the average 3/4 inch meter, 19 HCF, was 63.78. The first year of that rate plan actually saw that very slight decrease that I mentioned, 63.60. By 12-13,
decrease, right? Slight decrease.
I think it's a 0.3% decrease. An increase here to 66.41 and to 72.12 in fiscal year 13-14. Now, this is a 4% increase, I believe. This is, I believe, an 8% increase. And you say, well, why? If it was a 2.24 and we never got to the 5. Well, there are water adjustment charges that are there that we pass on the cost of electrical increases because we have to pump the water up the hill into the pressure zones. We have the cost of imported water that we just pass along as part of those water adjustment charges. So that is the difference that you see here.
I'm sorry, how did you refer to those charges?
Water adjustment charges.
In other words, that's not money that's basically going to GWP. That's just we have to pay more for the water, so we pass that through.
That's correct.
We need to pay more for the electricity. Okay, so I understand.
So, on multifamily, you can see the actual was 434.49 in 1011. It dropped dramatically. So the other half of your question, did the rates actually go up? Well, on multifamily, no, they didn't. They dropped. Even in 11-12, they remained lower than what they were as an actual. Again, average user size, 1.5, the meter size, and 19 units, the 137 HCF. So these are average customers, so we try to get it apples to apples. And even here in the 13-14 year, this bar signifies what they should have been had the COSA been accurate, and it wasn't. So you can see they dropped from 434 to 362.66, and what you see is even in the proposed 14-15 plan based on the Bartle Wells COSA, the amount is ever so slightly above. I think this is 436.57 versus 434.49. An almost insignificant increase over that period of time for the multifamily rates. You had asked a question previously about about commercial. Commercial really hasn't been a focus because the COSA generally got that right. And you see how the rates did increase as anticipated here. This is exclusive of the discussion on fire lines, and we discussed that at length last time. But this is just the commercial rates. You can see under the new COSA as we reestablish the rates, which kind of is why you do a COSA, to reestablish what your cost basis is. You can see what the new rates will be. And so there is a gradual slope up there. Again, average commercial size. So to the other question you had asked, 2% in the first year, 2% in the second year, 4% in the third year. The weighted increase, including, mind you, including the water adjustment charges, was 13%.
How much of the 13% was the water adjustment charges, and how much of it was, well, I guess the rest of it would be the actual?
Yeah, I
increase?
believe it's 10% of the COSA, and a little over 10% is COSA, and almost 3% is water adjustment charge, 2.5%. So with the proposed COSA by Bartle Wells, we are saying 4, a weighted increase of 18%. You say, well, what about the water adjustment charges there? Well, as you know from the COSA and the review that you've done, the COSA done by Bartle Wells, and we do know what our electric rates are because the council approved an electric rate plan previously. We have at least a prognostication of what the MWD rates will be. Those water adjustment charges are programmed into this 4%. So this really, I believe, is a very good apples-to-apples look at what the weighted increase was under the old rate plan, what the weighted increase will be under the new rate plan. So I believe this is about 31% over that period of time, about 5% a year, a little over 5%.
Okay. So and thank you. That does clarify a lot of things. To make sure, the 13%, which includes the water adjustment charges, does not include the 5%.
Does not.
2015.
That has been stricken as part. If you were to adopt the proposed rate plan.
And while the March 2012 rate plan did not include water adjustment charges calculated into the numbers, the September 2014 would.
In those 4 years, we have anticipated increases because we know what the electric is. We know what we have a better idea about when the MWD is. It would be not impossible, but it would not be likely that we would have to implement the water adjustment charges for electric or for MWD, barring some very extreme set of circumstances like drought, but mandatory drought. But that is, as you see in your program, we have a set of drought rates for that. So again, I think this is a good apples to apples. The issue that GWP has had, and I need to correct something that I had mentioned last time, because GWP in 2011 really found itself in such dire straits because rate making for GWP previously had been something of feast and famine. I had made the comment that you didn't increase water rates during the Great Recession. Actually, I got it reversed. You didn't increase electric rates. You, the City Council at that point, had not increased electric rates during the Great Recession from 06-07 to 12-13. On water, the water rates had not been increased from 02 to 07. From 02 to 07. Then they were increased systematically in 8, 9, 10, 11. My point being, I think the story remains the same, that what we're trying to get to is an issue of balance, where every year we can count on a very small increase, something that's very manageable, as opposed to lurching from 0 for several years to multi-year rate increases of 5, 6, and 7%. And the silver lining of Prop 218 and the need to do a cost of service analysis is that unlike previous types of rate making, you actually have a much better rhyme and reason to it. It's not perfect, as you heard Mr. Colantino say last week, but the idea is it's much more intelligent than it ever has been before. So what you have is this effort where we had gone through periods of no rate increases and then fairly significant rate increases, planned bond issues, and then not doing the bond issues, the ongoing capitalization of cash, meaning turning it into fixed assets and infrastructure as opposed to holding up because we weren't getting a key element of the strategic financing that was essential to the capital strategy that was approved by previous councils in GWP's overall master plan. So at this point, what you're trying to do, what I would commend the council for, is taking control of the situation, saying we've done the right thing on the electric side, and as we get through that, as that rate plan plays out, you'll be in a position to have pay-go capital and have moderate rate increases, all things being equal. And now we're looking at doing the same thing on the water side. making sure that we shore up our house such as it is, and paving the way for very moderate increases going forward. And that really is the story of this episode.
Does the weighted increase for each year contain the compounding effect, the impact that compounding has on it?
Yes, if you just took the straight fours, that would be 16, of course, 4 times 4.
Right.
So compounding one on top of another is how you get to that 18%.
Okay. So is it possible to tell of the 16, just call it 16? Well, let me ask, is the 13% also the compounded amount?
That is compounded because you took the 2, 2, and 4, which by itself, just naked on its face, is 8%. Which compounded one on top of the other would probably be closer to a little over 10. And when you increase the water adjustment charges, it pumps it up to 13. As I say, the COSA before you contemplates increased costs in water and in electricity.
Okay. So over a 7-year period, we will end up with 31% increase. It's not an insignificant number if we were to adopt the 444.
That's right. And so you get to that point of the discussion that we had last time. If we are going to be in that water business, then the obligation is to make sure that we have appropriate funds and support for all the different elements of that water business, be it from testing to pumping to distribution and storage.
Can we go back to, by the way, feel free to jump in at any time if anyone has any questions. Going back to the multi-family, multi-unit buildings, multifamily. Explain this to me. How does this translate in terms of who gets charged with this? I mean, who's billed? I don't own apartment buildings, so I don't know who's billed for the water these buildings. I mean, who's feeling the impact?
It all depends on who pays that bill. I would defer to Mr. Zern if he wants to have customer service come up to talk about it. But
does this mean that individual units felt a decrease?
No, this would be somebody with 19 units, so 19 meters.
Right.
The landlord's paying the bill. But in some apartment buildings, the individual pays the utility. Maybe they have a separate meter on there.
So as an example, everybody has to have an electric meter. So we have in the neighborhood of 85,000 electric meters. We have in the neighborhood of 33,000 water meters. So many multifamily buildings have single meters. The landlord generally pays the cost for that and then passes that on through the rent, hopefully deciphering between common watering versus individual unit watering. But it's rare that you'll see tenants in a multifamily building who pay directly, or where we have dedicated meters for each unit. It's something we'd like to get to and something that we have in our ordinance now, but that's not what we were built on in the past.
Okay. No, my colleagues seem ready to vote right now. I am going to open this public hearing. I only have 3 cards. I'm going to limit people to 2 minutes. So first person to go is Mark Vaneri, followed by Mike Moyle.
Just for the record, you're not really opening the hearing, but you're just allowing public comment.
I'm allowing it to speak, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, and members of the city staff. I'm Mark Vaneri. I spoke here. I want to thank you for letting me speak a second time. I spoke here last week, and my remarks were in favor of the 444 that's before you now that I think you're going to vote on tonight. Last week, as robust as the discussion was, I feel like a few points were kind of glossed over because there just wasn't enough information. I'd like to really applaud Mr. Ochoa for his knowledge. I think that it's great, and I think he showed excellent leadership in how he handled the problem after it was identified. However, that being said, I don't know that enough specificity in the amount of knowledge that each of the members that puts forth the COSA is expected with a degree of specificity of their knowledge. I think that if somebody has any knowledge about a report that's put forth, it has to be increasingly expanded so that you as a group that is going to vote on that can vote with an air of knowledge. I think what was lacking here is that we said simply that the staff was no longer here. I think that's kind of doing a disservice to the members of the community. I think that it would be inherent as part of a thing to go ahead and fix, to go ahead and say that we have several layers of overlapping knowledge, of intense knowledge. For instance, the assistant general manager of the Water and Power, at least from what I'm gathering, as I don't know to be an authentic document, the people who put the Wildan report before you includes Mr. Ochoa, at least the signature block. I can't tell that it's his signature. So that report went up through the city, through the layers of management to go ahead and say, this is what we think is what you guys need to vote on. I think that going forward, if we're going to go ahead and in 5 years have to go ahead and think about another one, well, what if somebody's not there that can speak to it with an air of knowledge? I think that's something that you can take care of tonight by specifying how much knowledge somebody should have. And then second, I think I put forward also that Burbank is dramatically lower in their rates than Glendale Water and Power is. And it was just remarked by Mr. Zern that there was no COSA available. Well, I contacted Mr. Robert Davis, who's the Burbank Water and Power general manager. I was able to easily email back and forth with him several times just today. So it left me with an air that it is possible to go ahead and collaborate. I'm sure that there are meetings that these gentlemen go to at least once a year as a symposium to talk things related to water. I think that we have to increase the collaboration and look for things that we can do to, rather than duplicate processes, go ahead and get some collaboration and really make efforts to go ahead and reduce those prices. I think if we were to go ahead and say...
I have to stop you. It's been way more than 2 minutes. So yes, thank you for your comments. And thank you for coming last week also. Mr. Ochoa, you want to...
I would only submit, Mr. Davis was kind enough to share his emails with us, and what I took away from that email was that that there is no COSA in Burbank. That's not to say that they won't do one, or that maybe they're not working on one, but that one doesn't exist. And therein lies kind of the double-edged sword of Prop 218. Historically, you would see, going back into as long as this system's been around, residential, because residential is composed of voters, would be subsidized by commercial. And when Prop 218 comes along, one of the unintended consequences, the beauty of the initiative system in California, is that there are unintended consequences. And wanting to make sure that residents were not paying any more than absolutely necessary under the law in terms of the cost to provide a service, the truth was revealed that, in fact, commercial had been, on many different fronts, subsidizing residential. And I think that's what, if I had to venture a guess, that might be what you're seeing in Burbank.
Okay, thank you. Mike Mohill, followed by Aram Kazazian.
Mayor Weaver, Mayor Sinani, before I start my speech, I'd like to have some clarity, if I may. It has always been traditional that speakers who want to speak on agenda items or consent items always had 3 minutes. Now, Mr. Weaver changed that, in my opinion, to keep his council critics off guard. He would make it 3 minutes one time, 2 minutes another time, and a 1 minute. And it was just all over the board, and we could not plan our speeches before the city council. I'm asking you, Mayor Sinani, if you keep the tradition of 3 minutes for agenda items and consent items, and unless there's a whole bunch of people in line who want to speak, let's say 10, 15 people, but there's only 2, 3, or 5 people, I think 3 minutes is not a lot of time to allow a speaker. So with that, I planned on a 3-minute speech, which was traditional up until now.
So in addition to this, you want a 3-minute speech?
No, I'm just giving this comment because it's for the speakers who like to speak.
I think you missed the point that my colleagues are ready to vote. I have no obligation to open, to even entertain the speakers at this point, but I want everyone to be heard, and now you're bartering over 1 minute. Come on. So let's hear. I'm eager to hear what you have to say. Let's
start from the beginning. The clock.
Start from the beginning.
Okay. Thank you very much. I did plan a 3-minute speech, but I'll make it 2.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members and the viewing audience. My name is Mike Mohill. Last week, 2 council members, including staff, misled the public and lied outright with a straight face by saying we never had any water rate increases since 2008. As always, Mrs. Friedman and Mr. Najarian presented a nice dog and pony show that single-family residents have not had any water rate increases. Councilman Friedman, you and your friend John Draymond along with Mr. Quintero, Weaver, and Nigerian, voted for a temporary water rate increase of 3.8% in October 2010. You and your colleagues blamed the drought, then asked the residents to cut back water usage by 10%. The people listened to you and cut back 18%. Don't you remember, Mrs. Freeman and Mr. Nigerian? You rewarded the people with a temporary rate increase of 3.8% that was never rolled back, and became a permanent water rate increase. Councilman Nigerian, prior to Mrs. Freeman's 2009 election, you, along with your friend, John Draymond, and Councilman Weaver, voted for a water increase in 2008 of 9%, 2009 14%, 2010 12%, totaling 35%, plus the so-called temporary water rate increase of 3.8%, not compounded. Council will vote tonight for another 16% water rate increase, not compounded, over the next 4 years. In conclusion, the GWP water rate increase will see a 54.8% water rate increase from 2008 through 2007. Last week, Mrs. Devine, it was very refreshing to see a council person on the side of the people and not on the side of the large developers or the city union bosses, feeling the pain and the suffering of the residents who have problems meeting ends meet. Might have about 30 seconds?
Please just finish,
Okay.
please.
As you know, council members Freeman, Nigerian, and Weaver for years have been illegally transferring money from the GWP to the general fund to back pay their union supporters for the past financial support. Council members, in turn, protected the unions with increases in salaries and pensions. The water rate increase will always be necessary as long as the GWP is being used as the cash cow for our CalPERS union workforce.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Was this, I mean, most of this wasn't really.
Yeah, it kind of falls under the Emily Latella Nevermind School of Public Speaking. And I'm sorry to be glib about it, but I think we had just said, and I apologize to Mr. Najarian and Ms. Friedman, it was my slip of the tongue last week, not theirs, where I said that there was no water rate increase during the recession, and I just clarified there was no electric rate increase during the recession. There was no water rate increase from 02 to 07. Again, the idea being that the city, that GWP, had gone through these periods of not increasing rates and then having to increase rates on a multi-year basis. What we're trying to get away from, what I tried to make painstakingly clear, was that we are trying to move away from that and get to a point where we are doing very small annual types of increases that folks can come to rely on. If Mr. Mohill didn't hear that as he was reciting his lines, my apologies.
Quick question to you. What was the increase from 2008 through 2011?
I believe there was a 5%, I believe there was 8%. There were substantial increases due to the drought. I mean, some of that data was not incorrect. It's matters of fact. We can dig that up for you, but there were substantial increases due primarily to drought and water costs.
Okay.
But again, I think it's worth noting, you look at 02 to 07, 0 rate increase.
Okay. Aram Kazazian, followed by Bob Getz.
Good evening. My name is Aram Kazazian. By the way, today's the internal communication that came out, amendment to the $2 million transfer from water to electric. And thank you very much, by the way, for putting this on the website. As I said, I've been saying this for almost 4 years now. There's a $2 million water transfer from water to electric, and thank you for giving me the information, which is absolutely not correct. But I'll work on it. I haven't had much time to work on it, but I'll work on it and bring you more information. Now, I believe, Mayor, I emailed you the rate increase that was put in 2008, 2009, and 10, 11 was a compounded of 38%. I mailed you the information on that as the ordinance went through. You do have that on your email. I also mailed it to Councilwoman Paula Devine. You should have that in your email. I sent it to you unless somebody interfered in the email. Now, we did have another 13% increase in this last 3 years, and which was the last one was 4% this year, January of 2014. And if we put another 4% increase of September of 2014, that's going to be an 8% water increase this year. If you're going to do it, you should start next year, not this year, because you're multiplying your problem. Also, what happened to our $60 million water bond we received, which we have no information on that. So we have a total of 31% in the 7 years increase, plus 38% water rate increase prior to that. And I believe there was a 2005, but I haven't been able to find it yet. It was a 2005, we had a slight water rate increase, but I cannot tell you it for sure because I haven't had the opportunity to find it yet. But I will find that information for
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Kazazan.
Thank you. See. Also, yeah, my recommendation is to start next year instead of this year anyway. I want to make sure if you're going to do it. Otherwise, you shouldn't do it at all because we already had almost 100% increase in the last 12 years.
Thank you, Mr. Kazazan. Bob Getz?
Can I briefly, just with respect to the memo, as you know, having read it, it does not say there was an additional $2 million transfer from water. It does explain that there was a review of the cost allocation between water and electric as for GWP's administrative and internal costs. The cost allocation changed the cost allocation from 75% to 75.25 to 68.32, which required an additional $2 million allocation from water, but it was not a transfer. So just for the record, and that's what the memo says, not what Mr. Kazazian said it says.
You may say it for the record. Mr. Kazazian's laughing, and he's going to come up and say the same thing over and over, even though he knows that he's lying. So we'll just keep hearing it, but I'm glad you corrected it. Thanks.
Mr. Getz?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm Bob Getz, a resident of Glendale. I do appreciate, Mayor, the opportunity to speak for a couple of more minutes today to clarify what I've been trying to explain to the members of City Council. In my email to you earlier this week, I mentioned that even with the reduced 4444 plan, the average single-family resident would see between the year 2010 and 11 in 2017 and 18, a 40% increase in the water rates. Now, how I arrived at that, and I just wanted to come up here today to clarify that I just wasn't pulling figures out of the hat. I took two charts provided by GWP. Slide number 5, which you saw earlier, I believe, this one up here, which showed the rate increases under the flawed rate plan that we had. And during that period of time from 2010 to 11 and 2013-14, rates went up 13%, and I think we were consistent on that. Where we differ is on the second element, and that is under the new plan, which is the 4444 plan. On slide 18 of GWP's presentation to at least us in the community, it indicates that for single-family residences, the rate increase under the 4444 plan to be 27%. Now, the different, you presented a chart with 18% increase. Was that an average, composite average, or was that for single-family residents, which I have been stressing all along, single-family residents? That's 27 according to your chart.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Getz. Mr. Ochoa?
Review the chart. I don't know if perhaps he's referring to the original staff recommendation.
No, the chart you just
showed.
But
at a series of 4% increases, that's what we're looking at here.
Is that for single family though, or is he's asking, are you combining multifamily?
These would be the system average rates, so I believe this is for single family.
Can we get some certainty on
Surely.
that?
You want to take the next speaker just to make sure?
We have one last speaker. I will not be taking any more cards. Last card, Harry Zavos.
My name is Harry Zavos. Just for the record, at the time I criticized the Wildam COSA, I also criticized Wildam's reallocation of the joint expenses between electric and water. And I remember that quite distinctly. I think I demonstrated how those figures could not be trusted. In that year, I think you'll find that originally you had budgeted $19 million to be transferred. The moment you reallocated the expenses so that water paid $2 million more, and therefore electrical had a windfall of $2 million, during that same year you increased the transfer from $19 to $21 million. So in effect, what you did once you allocated the $2 million to water, bringing up an additional $2 million for electric, you bumped the transfer from your original budget amount of $19 million to $21 million.
Thank you.
I would think that to the extent, if the conspiracy goes that you lost the $4 million transfer, you chose to cease transferring it, that somehow you backed it into the electric transfer, I think is just wrong-headed. To the extent that, as I'm sure Mr. Zavos would advocate as a fan of COSAs, you do look at what your costs are, the A&G costs. You understand what they are, and as those costs move, you reallocate them. If we were going to back into the replacement of the GWP water transfer, boy, we did it wrong. Because we were transferring, at one point, I believe, $4 million. As he indicates, the transfer from electric did go up to 21, and since then, year over year, the council has been reducing it by $250,000 a year. So I don't quite get, you can throw a lot of numbers on the wall, but not everything is going to stick, and I guess here is yet one more example.
Do we have any more, any clarity on whether it's 16 or 18% compounded or 27?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the 18% is system-wide. So each category, each service category will fluctuate on that a little bit. But keep in mind, when you're looking at that first grouping, remember the underpayment. So when you're looking at where we set it from, so that's the 13%, which was lower than what we had anticipated because of the errors. I think that 13% fully loaded would have been more like 21% if it had been in. So, but instead, it was significantly lower than that.
Okay.
Closing the hearing again?
Yeah. Hearing's closed.
May I move 7A because that's not the rates. That's the amendment of the ordinance, of chapters of the code.
7A. Before I call for a roll call, I know that I agree to the 4444 plan, but I can't bring myself to agree to it now because we're not really looking at even compound 18% increase for single families, looking at 27%. That's what I'm gathering from this conversation. That's a significant increase coming after an additional 13 increase that happened in the last 3 years. And I do agree with the city manager that we need to have incremental increases in these fees because not having perhaps, I wasn't here, I don't have the exact facts, but not having had any increases from 2002 to 2007 is, not even negligent, reckless, because then it's putting the city in a position where you have to catch up, and when you catch up, this is what happens. And when you catch up, then the residents feel the impact. Why? I'm okay with 3 increase. Why 3%? Because it's like an indexing of the in my mind at least, the increased cost of providing this service. You compounded it, it's going to be much more than 12% over 4 years. And from what I understand, since the 4444 was really the 18 years was the mix of system-wide increase, and single-family homes are much more, and we don't even have the clear numbers as to multifamily homes, how those would be impacted. I'm comfortable voting 3 with reluctance, but I can't vote 4. So we have a motion. We have a second.
Well, no, this is not on the rates. 7A
7A?
is the ordinance. It has nothing to do with the rates. Correct?
I wouldn't say it has nothing to do with the rates, but it's not imposing the rate schedule at the 4444. That's correct. It's just it's changes to the ordinance to implement the rate adjustment.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Council members Devine,
No.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian.
Yes. Next item, 7A2.
No, you have to pick 1, 2, 3,
Oh, we have to
4.
pick-
That's
Yes.
correct. So 7A was the
So-
ordinance. You're going to pick one of the 4 resolutions if you want to move forward on one of them. So 7A1 was the original staff recommendation of 5444. And then 7A2 is the 4444. And then 3 is what 1 is, but with the 6-month suspension of the drought rate. And number 4 is what number 2 is, except with the 6-month suspension of the drought rate. And then, regardless, we need you to adopt 7A5.
Mr. Mayor, considering I did want the original 5444, but I compromised on the 444 and the drought hold of 6 months, so I'll move 7A4.
I will second that, but Mayor, you're coming up with a 3333. I mean, we've had months and months of discussion. The 3333 option has never been put up. The numbers have never come before us. I can't look at that and see if that's going to get us out of the hole in 2 years or 3 years. So to come up with a 333 at this point is not fair to anybody on this dais to look at what the numbers would be. I mean, at least we had the 234, the 544, and all these other permutations to pull 333. I don't know what that means. I mean, I'd like to look at that and see if there's any validity to that
I'm
suggestion.
happy with that. Let's look at that.
Can we
That's fine.
can we either take a short recess to see how quickly we could come together with that information?
Let's take another item. We'll take a recess.
We'd take a quick recess. I'm
Okay,
sure we can
sure.
at least be able to tell you with clarity if we can have that tonight or if that would be something to come back next week.
So there was no
Okay.
second on my
Recess.
motion.
5-minute recess.
Yes, there was.
I think we're ready. If I think we have everybody, and I do apologize for the confusion in having multiple PowerPoint presentations running different information. You get lost sometimes looking at them. So if I can have our staff put up, if I have city clerk put up the slide that Mr. Getz is referring to. Okay. So here is 4444 plan, single family, 27. So these are the compounded increases over the 4 years for the entire class of single family customers. Okay? Tying that back to the slide that we showed you, those system rates, if you go to, can we go back to the slide that shows single family? Sorry. It's number 2 there, I think. This is what happens for folks, the average customer. So somebody with a 3/4 inch meter, someone that uses 19 HCF per billing period. So this depiction is true. What you see is the drop here, the increase here. We're looking to get to this number from the 72 that it is today to the 79. That is a significant increase, and we'll have staff calculate that for you. But again, the increases for these folks who are average customers, average users, is going to be less than the system-wide number of 27%, because that includes all users, the very low as well as the very high. So these numbers, it's almost apples and oranges, I'm sorry to say, but they are effectively both right. If you added up all the revenue, I'm sorry, if you toggle back for me to the other one. If you add up all of the revenue that comes in, you're going to look at this 27% compounded. When you look at the impact to Mr. and Mrs. Glendale, and that is a single-family customer, you will see the lower amount, because that is an average user using 19 acre-feet, or the HCF, not acre-feet, but HCF per billing period, as opposed to somebody that maybe is using a tremendous amount. But the aggregate amount of revenue increase is going to look like that 27. It's the difference between looking at the entire class of customer and the difference looking at a a slice of the customer base that is the average user. Is there anything you want to add to that, Steve?
The only thing is just to clarify, we call that the typical user versus average. So it's actually, you may not, it's what we look at as typical. I wouldn't call that average because it probably isn't. It's just what typical. And remember, the other thing is this is based on one size meter. There's a number of meter sizes, and that can affect your rate as well. So that all is what's calculated into that 27%. This is a very specific, as Mr. Ochoa said, a snapshot of one class.
But it's a class as a typical that would give the council the best understanding as to what the impact will be.
True.
When you say typical, you mean the majority of the single family?
No, I think
Of course, the average, kind of you go in the middle of the high.
It's probably closer to the average than the majority, and trying to say here's just somebody who's going to be impacted, the number of residents. You know, you saw what we used when we split the pie on the irrigation versus personal use and the 532 gallons a month that somebody would use with 2.8 people in the family. So, you know, again, these are estimates based on a cross-section of actuals that we see, and it can fluctuate dramatically.
But at the risk of elongating the process, I think it's important, as we have said throughout this process, to get it right rather than do it expeditiously. We would ask that we be able to come back to you just to verify, double-check all the information. Because again, I think what we're showing you are two subsets of information, kind of slicing that customer class in different ways. So with the council's indulgence, we would like to be able to bring it back to you. There was some discussion about 3333. A rough cut at that leaves us, I believe, with negative cash at the end of the rate plan, because it effectively leaves us flat.
That means we're in debt.
It means that our water fund has negative cash. It does not have a positive fund
By
balance.
how much? About?
I believe it'd be in the neighborhood of $9 to $10 million. So we're not doing any more damage. We're not going deeper. In fact, we're holding place. So what we can do is expand all under the Prop 218 notice, that ceiling that was given to you, that was put out in front of the public. And take a look at that one. Just, you've asked the question. I think we are obligated to answer the question and be able to come back to you with that information.
Well, also with the average user, you showed, I think it was a $7 a month increase, 7 or 9?
It would be, I believe, 7, and so that.
So it would be a $7 increase. So what would the 3% be?
I at this point, I don't know. We can provide that to you, but it's going to be something significantly less. The rate plan that you see before you is a combination of fixing the rate structure under the COSA and doing the 4% increases. That is going to provide you with something wholly different than just doing a straight 3% off of where we are right now. And that doesn't.
So
that
instead
doesn't
of a 7% increase, you'd be looking at something like a 5% increase? I mean, sorry, a $5 increase instead of a $7 increase?
Potentially, yes, somewhere in that neighborhood.
And that puts us $10 million into the hole.
Because you're using that over the system and over a long period of time.
Mr. Mayor,
But I'm sorry, sir.
I just want to, I may forget, but are you talking about a sine curve where it goes up and over? The typical is at the peak of the curve?
Mr. Mayor, I don't think we use anything that sophisticated, but that's essentially the idea, yes.
And the second point, there has been a motion on the floor and seconded. I think there has to be a vote on that motion.
If you want to vote on the motion, that's
Either
fine.
voted up or voted down.
But I think it's the healthy thing to do is for the city to have a chance to come back.
The motion was made by
Me.
Mr. Weaver.
Seconded by.
All right.
Mr. Najarian.
Thank you.
So if let's say we go to vote, but my colleagues do want to wait, I mean, how does procedurally?
I defer to city attorney, but my recommendation would be, if we are looking to bring the question back, would be to ask that the motion be withdrawn, just so that there is not a motion that is defeated at this point. And I do appreciate the motion being made by Mr. Weaver. But to the extent that if the council desires to continue the discussion, then we should continue the discussion.
I'm not interested in any more discussion. I backed the 5444. I compromised on the 4444. How many fours, I don't know. And now we're down to 3333. Hey, I'm done. We had the public hearing. I'm ready to make a vote. I made a motion. It was seconded. Unless Mr. Najarian is going to pull back, I'd like a vote.
If I may speak.
Please.
I understand your frustration, Mr. Weaver, and I just want to let you know where I am. My primary and singular objective in this process is to preserve the sustainability of our water company. I went to the 444 because I saw that that was the least highest increase that we could pass that would give us put us in the black, give us a positive fund balance at the end of the 4-year period. That is my goal. That is my obligation and duty as a councilman. I would love to sprinkle money amongst all the residents of Glendale. I would love to give you free water. That would make you very happy. But I can't do that because the water company would fail. Now, there's a proposal, an alternate proposal, not a formal motion yet, to investigate what a 3%, 4 years of 3% increase would do. I have that same obligation to see if, because I haven't seen any figures on that. I've had a off-the-cuff evaluation by the city manager, and these are complicated figures. This is really unfair to staff to just throw it to them at this point and say, come up with a number. I owe it to the residents and I owe it to the water company to see if that proposed increase of 3% across 4 years would give us that level of positive cash flow that would maintain the integrity of the water company. And that's what I'm going to look at.
So
I would make a substitute motion that we continue this to our next council meeting and place before us an evaluation of only the 3%, the 4 years of 3%, compared to the Weaver motion of the 4 years at 4%, and see where that goes. And my vote is going to be simple. If we are not in the black, if we don't have a positive cash flow at the end of those 4 years, I cannot support any plan. And as far as not supporting any rate increase, well, that's just pie in the sky. I don't think that's being responsible at all. But that's what I will do, and I will give the proposal by Mr. Sinanian due consideration and due deliberation, and I will wait for staff to come forward with those numbers and take a look at it. So that will be my motion to continue this for 2 weeks.
I think it was 34,000 notices, community meetings, 34 written protests, 2 public hearings on this matter. The information that you're requesting, and I think you're absolutely right to want to make sure that we measure twice and cut once, would be to come back, if the council's amenable, in the afternoon next week. I think you've taken a tremendous amount of public input. You are going to be here in the afternoon, I believe, for a closed session at any rate, and you have neighborhood night out or national night out in the evening. You could bring this discussion to a head.
That's awesome.
And I think what you ultimately will see is the discussion here that 27% is, as you note here on the bottom, is the fix of the rate structure plus the series of 4% increases. That's where you get to that number, and then you saw on the other slide the slice of that impact on the typical customer. We will reconcile the two for you, and we will be able to make sure that you have a strong comfort level whichever direction you go.
I don't mean to be facetious, but we're not going to look at a 2-2-2-2 next, are we? I mean, we've dropped 3 times now. As Mr. Najarian says, 3-3-3-3 puts us in a negative. It's not supporting. And I pray that we do not open the public hearing again. I mean, it's done. We've heard everything.
Just so that it's not it's not lost on anyone. The reason we're looking at 3333 for the first time is because for the first time we're looking at a 27% increase for single-family homes, and I understand the intricacy of the average household being, but that means a lot of things. That we can discuss that for a long time. That's the first time we're having that particular discussion. First time we're looking at real 40. The possibility and likelihood that 40%, some single-family homes will see a 40% increase from their 2011 bill. I mean, that's why we're looking at 3333. At the last Tuesday's meeting, we did not look at the fact. In fact, I heard, and we can go back to the recordings, I heard that there was no increase for single-family homes, that, in fact, the fees, the bills went down. And now we're finding out that there was, in fact, a 13% increase. So that's why we're looking at 3333. Let's not accuse each other of unreasonableness, because, once again, that's the reason you're looking at 3333 for the first time.
Mr. Mayor, one thing we ought to be concerned about, 40% of what number? I mean, dollar-wise, are you going to be paying as much as 2 Starbucks coffees a month because
we can't get into our residents' pockets. We can't be counting their cash. I mean, it's none of our business how much maybe they don't have money for 2 Starbucks coffees.
Well, the dollar increase to them, the incremental increase at 40% is how many dollars for the average or the typical? If it's $5, that is a couple Starbucks.
I just don't think it's our place to get into that kind of thing.
We can't go bankrupt. We can't take the water department out of business. We're already $9 million in the hole, right, Mr. Ochoa? $9 million in the hole.
At this point,
and it's increasing every day.
Well, no, you're effectively running in place every day right now, and our issue is that we need to erase that negative cash, and the question will be, what plan at the end of the plan? Because I know you don't want to solve that problem in 1 year. What plan will get you out of the negative cash situation that's developed over years that will be the least painful to the customer?
So we have a substitute motion.
Substitute motion.
Need a second? Continue it till next week.
Next afternoon session.
Whenever our meeting occurs, whether it's a special meeting.
So it would be to the special meeing. We'd have a special meeting next week, August 5th.
Yes.
3 o'clock.
Let's do that.
Needs a second.
Second.
So do we need to vote on both motions or substitute?
No, just the substitute motion.
A roll call, please, on the substitute motion.
Council members Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
No.
Mayor Sinanian.
Yes. Okay, next item, and I'd like to request that we take action item 8B first.
Fire Chief regarding weed abatement charges, 2013-14. B1 is a resolution confirming charges.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move. Be glad to move 8B1.
Good evening.
Good evening,
We
Mr.
do
Mayor.
this annually. You know that.
Members of the City Council.
Yeah. Good evening.
This is hopefully a perfunctory matter. As you're aware, we are in the midst of a 5-year agreement with the County of Los Angeles for abatement of hazardous vegetation on our vacant lots. In accordance with the government code, when the work is done, the charges need to be submitted for confirmation by the governing body, in this case, the City Council. The good news here is that out of 634 parcels, all but 20 were in compliance, and the only fee that was required was an inspection fee, which was about $43. The others have a fee that is directly related to the cost of the abatement efforts made by the county to make sure that those properties are safe. What's before you today is to confirm the charges so that the county can assess the actual cost of abatement on those property tax bills. If there are any questions, Doug Nichols, our fire prevention coordinator, is here, and I can answer those questions as well.
I almost didn't recognize you in your new uniform.
Okay.
I'll move 8B1.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now 8A, please.
8A under action items is General Manager of Glendale Water and Power regarding implementation of Phase 2 of the Water Conservation Ordinance. 8A1 is a resolution implementing Phase 2. 8A2 is a resolution amending city's fiscal year 2014-15 adopted comprehensive citywide fee schedule, adding fine amounts and adding violations subject to fines and processing fees for water conservation ordinance violations.
Mr. Ochoa.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, as you may be aware, the State Water Resources Board earlier this month adopted an emergency water conservation plan that essentially requires local agencies, local water agencies, to put into effect a mandatory plan as it relates to outdoor watering. As you know, we have our no water waste policy that's in place at all times. It was implemented by the council in 2007, and it includes a number of items, 12, I believe, various things, but it does not have a restriction on actual outdoor watering or irrigation. It just requires that you only water between certain hours. So by going to Phase 2, we then implement mandatory measures for primarily irrigation. It takes irrigation down to 3 days a week, Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays, for a maximum of 10 minutes. And those watering periods cannot occur between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. each evening. There are some other measures in there. There's some exceptions for park watering, a little bit of flexibility there. Water features must be recycled or recirculating type units, but everything else that's in our no water waste policy remains in effect. Things regulating washing of vehicles, hosing down hardscape, those kind of things, reporting and fixing leaks that are detected, overspray of water. Those are the kind of things that are in place at all times. We're adding to that primarily the restriction on irrigation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have on that.
Yes, Mr. Najarian.
Mr. Zern, we have a public benefit fund in the water side, do we not? Or
the electric side.
Electric, nothing in water?
No, sir.
One of the recommendations is that if you are using your hose to wash a car, for example, that it be fitted with a automatic shutoff nozzle.
Correct.
Not a nozzle, I guess, would be.
Correct.
Are there funds available to make those available to the public?
That would have to come out of water department funds if it was the desire of the council to provide those.
Can we find out how much those cost and
absolutely
see what it would be to provide one to every registered customer?
And those same nozzles can be used to water your lawn. Actually, if you use those type of nozzles with a hose to water your lawn, you don't have the 10-minute restriction that you do for irrigation systems. So those have a dual purpose.
I mean, that'll be.
But I'd be happy to look at that.
Is there any exception in terms of water? Well, you just said if you're using the hose,
then
you don't have. Well, what about, is there any exception for food-bearing plants? If somebody has a vegetable garden that has on a timer system, do they get, they can't use that?
Drip irrigation. So if you're using a drip irrigation system, that will give you that will alleviate you from having to stick to the 10-minute cycle.
Right.
So that's the other benefit that you could have.
Mr. Zern, you said the hardscape. Sidewalks, driveways, but what if you have hardscape in the backyard?
It would be all of those things. You shouldn't be hosing down your patios, your driveways, your sidewalks,
so
any hardscape work.
Since half of my backyard is all in hardscape and I put it there to save on watering lawn, now I'm caught. I can't even hose that off.
That's correct. We would encourage you to use a broom or other
I've
non-watering
been using
device.
a broom, but you know, dust accumulates.
I understand.
You can't even do it once or twice a year.
I understand.
Ms. Devine?
Yes. I have two interesting emails. One was concerning trash bins or trash barrels at the homes. And somewhere, I guess, it says that we should keep those clean and wash them. Is there anything in this ordinance?
Ms. Devine, there is nothing specifically that relates to that. That's a very good question because that becomes a bit of a health and safety issue. We ask people to keep their garbage cans clean and then pick up the remaining residual that comes out of that can. But that is not something that we have included in here at this point in time. And we can actually provide that service to you for a fee if somebody is interested in that. But on having the homeowner do it themselves is not included in here. It doesn't mention it one way or the other, to be honest with you.
So we just ask them to be do their be diligent about that.
And actually, a good way to do it is if you can do it on your lawn and then clean it up afterwards and let the infiltration go into a landscape area and not a hardscape area. That would be preferable.
Great. And I got another email, and this one might go to Hassan, about a woman has like two pools being constructed in her neighborhood. And she said maybe we should have a moratorium on construction of pools, because that's going to cause, a lot of water usage.
That would be at the pleasure of the City Council. If the City Council would like to direct staff to come up with an analysis and a proposed staff report with an option for a moratorium on building new swimming pools, we could do that.
Is there any interest in that?
I own a pool, so I wouldn't think it's right for me to agree with something like that.
The only moratorium I would vote for would be a moratorium on construction in the downtown area, whose water uses, I think, far exceed a 20,000-gallon swimming pool, which is your typical.
And most of the new apartment buildings have swimming pools.
Now, actually, this keeps coming up, and it is probably something worth having its own discussion, because the link between building apartment buildings and water use really needs to be looked at in the context of growth in Southern California and how that growth affects the water use for the whole region, because this drought is not just a Glendale drought. This is statewide. And yes, if people stopped moving to California, it would help. If people stopped producing children around the country who ate the food that's grown in the Central Valley, we wouldn't have to use as much water on irrigation for farms, which is where the majority of the state's water goes. It's very, very complicated. Apartment buildings use, and I'm not saying forget about whether or not we should have more apartments in Glendale. It's a separate issue. But just in terms of the water use, apartments use much less water than single-family homes. You want to worry about development. Think about the Newhall Pass and the 60,000 single-family houses that have just been entitled in what was previously open space, houses that will all have yards. So whether they're here in Glendale or somewhere else, if you want to conserve water, you either stop people from moving here or you put them in apartments rather than houses. And if you're going to stop anyone building new housing in all of Southern California, it has to be done as a whole region, because if places like Glendale don't build an apartment buildings, places like Newhall Pass build single-family houses which use much, much more water. So if we're going to talk about the effect of apartments on water, let's really seriously have this conversation instead of just saying, if there's a new apartment building in Glendale that's going to throw us into drought or somehow cause our users to spend more money. The truth is that Metropolitan gives you a water allocation for your growth. So the rest of us don't have to save more water because of an apartment building. It doesn't work that way. We get more water allocated to us from the state when we have growth. We're given a growth allowance. Now, there are a lot of reasons not to have apartment buildings built, but the use of water is linked to the population for the entire state and the population for Southern California and the type of housing those people live in. So if you're going to really throw that out, let's get real and have that conversation. And if you want to stop people from using water, you have to look at, again, the whole state. Now, I heard something interesting today, that our water use as a city hasn't gone up much since 2006. So as a city, even though we've grown, although we lost 10,000 people keep forgetting about that. We have 10,000 less residents than we had 10 years ago. We're just kind of getting them back. We're using the same amount of water as a city as we did in 2006. So more efficiency, newer buildings. I can tell you a single-family house that's on a quarter of an acre that has a yard is going to use a lot more water than a whole bunch of apartments in the downtown. So, whether or not we have more apartments, it's an important discussion. This is what's happening in our city. It's what's happening in all of Southern California. But to think it's so simple as if we don't build another apartment building, all of a sudden water use goes down, it's not true. It's just not the way it works.
I agree, Ms. Friedman. That makes perfect sense. I mean, people move to the greater Los Angeles area. They don't move here because Glendale is building more apartments. They move here because they want to be here. They move to Glendale because we have more units. But that doesn't impact water usage on the regional level. And I'm not sure how you can implement a program stopping people from moving to Southern California. I mean, that would be... And
I'm not saying it's a discussion for now, but I think if we're going to really have that discussion, let's really have the numbers, let's really have an analysis. Let's look at the 60,000 new single-family homes in the Newhall Pass. See if we don't build here, which cities are going to pick up that growth and what kind of growth it's going to be, and really look at how that impacts the drought and water usage.
Santa Clarita will grow, and it's much more arid than we are, right? And they probably need much more water than we do. So
the desert communities, I mean, that's where you're really seeing a lot of water usage. You know, when you have areas like Palmdale, Lancaster, that have very large growth allocations for water, that start building, not apartment buildings, but that's where people are going to build new suburbs, and it is very dry, you're going to see a tremendous amount of water being used in those communities. So it's a complicated issue, and it's difficult, and there's a lot of challenges. And it's not just people moving to Southern California because we have great weather. It's worldwide population growth. I mean, we have an unsustainable amount of human beings on this planet, and you're going to see resource issues planet-wide. And this is, I mean, not to be doomsday, I think it's sort of the beginning. I mean, the population growth in this world is out of control, and we're seeing resource issues and wars and famines all around this globe. So, you know, it's a much bigger issue than us putting in an apartment building. We have challenges as an Earth, as a world that we're coming up against, from climate change to overpopulation, and it's the tip of the iceberg. And I as a council member, as a resident, I spend a lot of nights sleepless thinking about this. There are huge issues that, as a nation, we have to think about, and we need to think of them in that context, because when you pull them out and just in this small microcosm and try to hook them up with things like the California drought, it kind of you lose the reality of the actual issue. But I had something else about conservation I wanted to ask about our ordinance, to bring it back on topic, which is, how are our gray water regulations at this point? Are we making it easy enough for people to install gray water systems, to do things like take water from showers, from clothing washers, and places where it makes sense, and use that for irrigation?
Ms. Friedman, that's still something that we have to coordinate a little bit better with the Building and Safety Department.
Well, I'd like to see us do that. I think there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of wasted water going down the drain. There are washing machine products that you can use that are gray water safe. We use them in our home. I'll tell you right now, they don't do as good a job as Tide, but they do a fine job. And if you water your plants with them like we do, the plants love it. A lot of nitrates, your plants will go crazy. And I want to be sure that people understand that there are options like that, and that in the same thing with your shower. I mean, so much the water that goes down from the shower, if you're using, good products, there's no reason you can't use that in your yard. So I would love to find ways that we can streamline this and make it easy for people, for their plumbers, we don't have neighborhood services running around busting people for dumping water from their washing machines into their yard or whatever it is. We need to find a way to make, I know that there are state building codes too, but we've got to find a way to make this so that it's understandable and people understand that it's permittable. It's a lot of information. People think it's not allowed, and it wasn't allowed a few years ago, which was crazy. So I'd like to see us really move quickly in that direction.
We will talk.
We will talk to each other, and we will inform.
Thank you, Ms. Friedman.
One other thing, do we do water audits for people on request?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I'd recommend that to residents. I mean, my husband's a landscape contractor, and he does these water audits. I mean, we do it, we pay for it, but people hire him to do it. And by changing irrigation, we've seen people save $200-300 a month on their outdoor irrigation. I mean, just simple stuff like putting in drip irrigation, even just making sure your sprinklers are adjusted correctly. I mean, so much waste that people don't know about. So if we offer that free from the city, we should promote that heavily on GTV6, on our website. We'll save the consumers so much money and save a lot of water if people take advantage of that.
And Mr. Mayor, Ms. Friedman brings up a point, just so I can add to this. We will have an extensive outreach campaign for all of our conservation efforts. GWP has maintained and continues to maintain some level of promotion of conservation, but obviously during these very difficult times, we make that push even harder. And we're working very closely with Mr. Lorenz and his staff to use every venue and opportunity we can to get the message out. And we have quite an extensive program ready to roll that's actually already started. And we'll just continue to ramp that up.
Very well. So back to the gist of 8A1. Do we have motion?
You want a motion on 8A1 and 2?
With the comments as given by council?
We've got those, yes.
Okay.
Great.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Devine?
Yes.
Friedman?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian?
Yes. 8A2.
Council members Devine?
Yes.
Friedman?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian?
Yes. Next item, please.
At C is City Manager regarding City Council appointments to agencies with vacant positions. C1 is a motion appointing members of council to the Arroyo Verdugo Subregion Steering Committee, Burbank Glendale Pasadena Airport Authority Commission, and Eco Rapid Transit.
I would like to nominate Paula Devine for Arroyo Verdugo Sub-Region Steering Committee.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Council members Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian.
Yes. The next item, I'm assuming this is former council member Frank Quintero's seat.
Yes, sir.
I would like to nominate Frank Quintero for this position.
Second?
Are you sure he really wants it?
Roll call, please.
Council members Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian.
Yes. And next one is Eco Rapid Transit.
And I'd like to nominate Mayor Sinanian for the Echo Rapid Transit.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Council members Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian.
Yes. Congratulations to everyone. And next item, please.
9A is a hearing director of community development. This was continued from July 22nd, 2014 regarding appeal of Planning Commission approval of standards variance case number PVAR 1236710 for property located at 1551 Glenmont Drive.
Yes, Mr. Ochoa?
Yes, sir. We have a rather complex, detailed presentation for you. We would ask that we have staff go through the entire question and then take questions, or go through the entire presentation and then take questions, because I think we can spell out a number of issues as we go. So with that, I'll defer to Mr. Agani if he wants to bring up Mr. Baxter, and we'll go from there. Yeah?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Baxter will go through the presentation right now.
Mr. Mayor, and council members. I understand this is very complicated, so I was thinking to try to really make it simple, I'm going to use some of the plans. And when you were handed out your PowerPoint presentation, the hard copy, while I was sitting here going through thinking of the comments from others about the complication, I tabbed a couple of pages in yellow so that if you want to follow there, I'm going to go up here as well. And I think I'll just jump there, and then I'll tell the story rather than going through and looking at all this narrative and wearing you out on it. So, for instance, here, this page would be the first tab. And what I would like to show you is these are plans that were approved for a retaining wall. And the red line at this property at 1551 Glenmont is the wall that was approved on the southern property line. The street is over here. And the wall that's below it is a green wall that's existing, that was part of the property, built with the property down below. There's a house down here at 1545. Now at this point here, and these are some of the walls that were shown, and we took some samples on the original plans, and this is a copy of the plans that show the walls that were approved. And this is an elevation view showing how the wall had tapered down, sloped down. And the red line is just showing the area where the wall that was built with a permit. The green wall, again, is showing its relationship below it that's existing. This is looking down like if you're looking straight down on standing above it. Again, this shows the street. This was previously what was there. And then this is the wall that was approved with the permit. And again, the green wall is existing. So that's the applicant got that approval in 2005 and started construction. And in 2006, from August to October, they had several inspections, and the last inspection was in October, and they didn't get approvals, they had some corrections. So on the next tab, we show, let me just jump to the next set of plans right here. So the next set of plans, when I worked with the applicant, again, you see the red wall that was approved and the green wall that's existing. Now, this wall here shows up. This wall was never reviewed by permit, by staff, by anyone. It was just installed. And so what the staff then was, this happened when staff started getting this information was 2010. I should say the planning staff received some comments from the neighbors asking us to investigate this. So the planning staff, myself, I went out and looked at it, and I worked with the applicant to try to find out some as-built conditions, because we understood this wall here. We had plans for this, the red wall. We had this green wall on those plans, so we assumed we knew what that was, as well as the property line. But we had nothing here on this wall that's a blue wall here. These other little items I'll get to in a second here. So we talked to the applicant and said, listen, your as-built are showing some discrepancies. The red wall isn't built according to the plan that was approved. This wall here is too close to the green wall. So it's supposed to be further away, but he built it too close to it. So that was a zoning code issue. Without trying to get too complicated, staff can't look away from that. There was a deviation to what was approved on a plan, and that's a deviation to what's approved in what's allowed by code. Same thing back here. This wall had a problem in terms of being too high. So this wall wasn't built per code, and this wall wasn't built per the approved plan. Actually, both of them, neither one of them, according to plan. This wall over here, we had the same problem. This wall we never saw. It just showed up one day after the complaint. We walked out there and said, well, goodness, where did this wall come from? And in particular, in this area here, this wall is way out of sync with what the code allows. You'll see on the plan, you might be able to see better on your sample here, there's a line that goes like this, right here. And this is the front setback line, 15-foot setback. And this wall is all in the street setback. Now, large walls are allowed in the street front setback. But there are some very complicated rules. Will just make your head spin if I start going through it. But the basic idea is you cannot build a wall and fill in behind it. And in this area right here, in particular, that's exactly what happened. So the wall is about 4.5 to 5 feet taller than what's allowed by code because it's all filled in back here. There's some suspicion about this, but the applicant's saying it complies, and so we're going to take his word for it, and in plan check we'll be able to verify that. Now this wall over here I already mentioned is too close to this wall below, so this was also a zoning code violation. And then back here, this wall is only allowed to be 3 feet high. He got an approval for a 3-foot high wall right here, retaining. There was no permit for any kind of freestanding wall on top of it. There was no approval for a retaining wall on top of it. It shows out of the blue. So we said to the applicant, okay, we have a problem here, we have a problem here, and we have a problem right here. How are we going to solve this problem? I said, by variance, we have to identify in a variance a problem, particularly in this area, here and here. And so what we worked out with the applicant is, maybe we can narrow some of these down. Can you correct any of these? And the applicant said, yeah, I'll do it. He wasn't happy about it, but he said, I'll agree with it. So this shows up. And this is where the applicant is going to cut this wall out right here, take these two away, and he's going to step back from this point here, going back here, and step back going to here, so that this area is cut away and it meets the code requirement for height. He's bringing, let me go back, I'll show you just an example there. He's going to bring this wall way down, no more than 18 inches above the natural grade. You can see it's 4 to 5 feet higher, or maybe a little bit taller at this point. And so that's one of the issues. He said he's going to do that. We said, fine. So all we had to do now is worry about the distance between this wall and this wall being too close by code. And there's no administrative way that staff over the counter can say, it's okay, let's be practical, and let's just say it's okay. By code, we don't have that option. Staff has to look at it pretty strictly. So then looking at some of the, this sort of just shows some of what we saw when we first went out there. Somebody said, well, why would you even show that? That's not what it looks like now. You're correct. When we first went out there, we were looking at this and wondering, where did this wall show up at? This was never on any plan or approved. So we had to look at that, and the hearing officer, the first time around, had to look at this to understand the whole issue. So backing up here, this area here is the area that a wall was supposed to be only 3 feet high, and the wall from this point through here is 7 feet high. And we're looking at the top, looking down. what the applicant had approval for was to have this scooped out. None of this dirt here. The dirt was going to be back here, and this was going to slope down the hill to a wall that was 3 feet high. So the applicant says, I tell you what, we can solve this problem. What we're going to do is we're going to scoop it back out here like this, excavate it out. We want to leave this wall here, though, that 4-foot-high wall, as like a boundary fence wall on top of the retaining wall. So it's still 7+ feet high. Only 3 feet of it will be retaining. The remainder will not be. So staff said, this is what you want to submit, fine. Then I can show you here. And so what we're looking at is this situation here. When we went out there, you were looking at a photograph of the dirt coming to this point right here. This is all filled in. And the applicant said, what we'll do is, here's the 3 feet that we were approved for. We did build this without a permit. We had no permit to show a freestanding wall of any sort. So what we'll do is we will carve this back out, get rid of that dirt to comply with the code, give us a freestanding wall right here like a boundary wall. That's what I was referring to. So we presented our case to the hearing officer. One of the things that staff has been, for those of us, and I've worked here a few years with the city, and so I grew up with some of this from my career point of view of what Hillside Guidelines are about. Hillside Guidelines began in 93, and I was here before 93. And I've seen how this has come about because of my experience knowing how the interest of the community to preserve hillside developments. In fact, in 1993, there was what's called the Hillside Design Guidelines. They're incorporated in the zoning code. And the whole idea is to break up walls and terrace them up instead of having it right here if we can. Because what we're looking at, you think, okay, we're only looking at this little 4 feet. What's the big deal, Mr. Baxter? Well, we have a property line right here in which this wall is separate and distinct from this wall on 2 separate properties. They're not on the same property. So it doesn't matter how close they are because this one is all by itself. But we have a wall here that's 5 or 6 feet high, and then you have another 7-foot wall on top of that, and then you have a little 11-inch freeboard. So you have quite a tall wall. I mean, it's probably taller than the floor to ceiling here when you're staring up at it. So you're looking at a fairly tall wall there. And then the problem is that we felt that that's not consistent with the Hillside Design Guidelines, which is the idea is to take a wall like this, if we can, and bring it back up and put it here. Now, since he never had an approval for this wall, the staff felt a better option, rather than keeping it here, is to bring it up here. Because he's not using this anyway, we would landscape it. It would provide some type of a screen or buffer, and it would provide less of a barrier or flat face here for the neighbor who's down here at this level. So that's one of the conditions. The applicant says, no, wait a minute, we don't want that. That's a condition we want to take out. We want to be able to keep that wall. Another condition related to that is we had said that if you remove this part, if you maintain this, you can never fill it back in. Because we don't want to take a chance that, let's say he keeps his wall, and then all of a sudden, this, through whatever methods, erosion, lack of maintenance, this all of a sudden gets filled in with dirt and it becomes flat again. Another property owner. So we want to have a condition we want to make sure that this stays open, and ideally we'd like to have this wall move back up here. And then the last issue that is here, and this is one that was brought to my attention. I think it makes good sense. Also, having worked with design review for decades, one of the common themes is a consistency of design in wrapping materials around corners. Now we have here a split face block, plain block, and split face, and this type of alternating theme down along that entire south property line wall. Here we have ledger stone. This is the wall that staff never saw. This is now all ledger stone. This is the plain block, split face block. And one of the things that staff would have said if they had come in and asked for this, we would have said, sir, why don't you pick a consistent material? You're wrapping around the corner. This is facing the street. This is the most prominent view when you drive down the street right here. You're looking at this. Why does it have to be two? But that never was part of our conversation because it was done before we ever got there. So what we thought would be appropriate is what is the higher quality? Well, the ledger stone has a higher quality look. We felt they would be more consistent with what the design review board would appreciate. And so we had recommended a condition to wrap that veneer around the corner, down the side. And we thought that would be a consistency of design and that it would be appropriate, it would be of a high quality design, and the city expects that. And that pretty much wraps up the three conditions that the applicant wants removed. He says, I don't want to do that. I want to leave them just like this. Now, here's the thing, though, and this is where I can see where this is a legitimate argument. Since he's bringing it down here and bringing it down here, it may very well be that this will look like two separate walls altogether. Now it looks like one combined, like a corner of a house, if you will. So if this wall is gone up here, and this wall is gone, and now this is all dirt with landscaping, I could see the argument, and I didn't pick up on that, but I could see an argument where, all right, ledger stone here and alternating materials veneers over here. Okay, maybe we could work with that for this point. But going back to the back here, again, I've heard different arguments here recently, but this is the area now. This is where the whole argument is going. The variance was here. We approved that variance. It went to Planning Commission. They backed us up with all the conditions that I'm discussing with you, based on what I wrote in the staff report. And I can go through questions. Again, I know it's so detailed, it's kind of boggling. For such a simple thing as retaining wall. I apologize for that. That's for being a technician for 26 years. So this is the area of the argument right here in the back. The street, this is the back. Here's the applicant's pool. The appellant's backyard right here. I think what I'll do is say at this point I'll conclude my comments. And I'll be open to questions for what it is.
Yes.
I have a question. So you said that the argument was over on the left, but it's not, right? It's still that corner piece because they are requesting the removal of the condition, remove a portion of retaining wall that's no longer retaining earth. Isn't that the part on the corner you were talking about?
No, ma'am.
So are you saying that you gave a variance to allow that big section on the corner?
No. Well, very good point. Let's go back here. Let's see what, I had some handy-dandy people good with this stuff, and let's see. So at this point here,
You just went past it. That
I'm trying. Oh, there we go. Okay, here we go. Okay, so when this wall was built right here, it intersected with this wall here.
Right.
Now this wall, at the very beginning, if you go back to your first tab that I had shown you there, or tried to put on that first drawing, let's see, and the second page of it, so right behind it, it shows it terracing down. That retaining wall was terracing down.
Right, but it's not the way it was built.
That's correct. It's square. And it's intersecting right here, and this area is all fill now.
Right.
4 or 5 feet of
So
fill.
you're allowing them to keep it that way?
No, I am not. What we had done is this. The applicant had 3 issues, zoning violation issues. He said to us, let's remove this zoning violation. Remove this zoning violation by, I will voluntarily make this work. I'll take this out. I'll take that corner out and stair step it down so it meets code.
So he's still, that's not the condition in
That is
number
correct.
8 that he...
Because he's saying, we'll make this meet code.
Are we sure? Because on this, it doesn't say what portion they're talking
I know,
about.
yes, ma'am, but I know exactly what portion it is, trust me.
Which is a little confusing.
Yeah, exactly. So when he came in on the approved plans, and I have the big set of plans here, I didn't want to have everything up here again, it's sort of, he came in. All right, here, this is the area of this wall right here.
So this
in
is
the front.
this is that section that's on the left side of the southerly wall.
That's correct, ma'am.
So do we have a photo of that?
Oh, yeah. Yes, ma'am. We have lots of photos. Let's see. All right,
Like
so
from the neighbor's side?
what we have here is...
That's an old picture.
Yeah, I know it is an old picture. But
So
this is
that's not the corner on the street that we were
Yeah,
just
this
talking
is it.
about?
This
Okay,
is-
so where's the one on the southerly side that we're talking about? Where's the section you're talking about?
It's right here.
I thought you just said he was taking all that out.
He is.
Yes. Okay, let's back up.
Just the
This
corner.
right here, he said he's taking all that out.
Okay.
He's taking all that
So
out.
that's different than what you just showed us.
Nope, that is the same one.
Okay,
That's
so
an
what do
old
we-
picture.
You just said he agreed to take it out.
That's correct.
So where is the section where he's appealing taking it out?
That's correct. All right, here we go. The section that we don't have it from the downside, we have it from the upside. And the upside is right here.
So it's that. So we don't have the photo from
We
the
don't
other
have,
side.
we don't have, I think maybe the applicant or the neighbor may have that. I'm not sure.
So let me ask you, so do we not, I mean, clearly he had a sloped yard and he wants a flat yard. So he goes and he builds his retaining walls and he backfills it with dirt.
Correct.
Does the hillside guidelines talk about that? You mentioned something that you're not supposed to do that, but what does the hillside guidelines say about
Well, first
creating flat pads?
we have ordinances. So the first part of the ordinance is, see if we can. So in the ordinance, the earth in the front yard, he could technically move this whole wall up here as long as he's not having the top of this wall more than 18 above the natural grade at the time of construction of when this house was built, at the existing time. So what he's done here is the wall's higher. So he said, I'm going to take this out right here.
Well, he also filled it.
Oh, yeah. Yes, yeah,
So he's taking that dirt back out.
That's correct.
So my other question is, the section of wall that we're talking about that's in play here,
That's in the very back down
in the
here.
back, how do we know that it was engineered correctly if we were going to leave it?
Well, he's required to get a permit because in 2006.
But how would you know that, since there were no inspections right at the time it was built,
No.
since it was built illegally?
No, please, no comments from the
Let me
audience.
back up. I have the building department inspection record. So there were inspections on portions of these, not all of these. And up to a separate level.
So if he wasn't allowed to build it, how were we inspecting something that wasn't allowed to be built?
When it was inspected, as I mentioned, 2005 it got a permit, 2006 the inspection started, and in a 2-month period, those were all the inspections that there were, and then they stopped. Now, as I understand, when I spoke to the former building official, you have large posts dug into the ground, very deep into the ground. And then you have a grade beam that goes across on each of those. And then you build up the wall from there.
So he built up above where he was supposed to build?
He got approvals for the grade beam. And he got approvals for a portion of the lower wall. And where he had some rebar, these steel metal posts coming out, I guess that they use for construction. That's as far as he got.
So is the issue that he went above, he built higher than he was permitted?
No, the issue is that for that wall, let's see, let me make sure I got the right one for you. Right. The issue is that this wall here, which we're looking at that corner right there, is just too close to here. It's 7 inches too close.
So our inspectors inspected it but didn't notice that it was too close?
Ma'am, I get the building
But
department,
he
I
also,
apologize.
did he also backfill when he wasn't supposed to backfill?
In here, absolutely.
There, but he's removing that.
He's removing that.
And then what about the portion, but you also said that that sidewall was too tall, right?
This one right here
Yeah.
is too tall.
And then was it inspected at that height?
That, no, it could not have been because it was, again, the grade beam.
It was just the grade beam. So they
And a
didn't,
few blocks above so that it could stick in concrete.
so that height was never inspected or permitted? He
No.
just decided he'd build higher than he was permitted?
He will tell the story what he did. But I know it wasn't inspected. Based on the inspection report here, that it says not approved. There were corrections on 2 times for footings and rebar. It doesn't state where, whether it was in the front of the or in the rear.
Do we know if the corrections were made? Was that inspected?
No, there's no follow-up inspection since that time.
So let me ask the city engineer. Is there a city engineer here? Ms. Ruby?
This would be this would be done under the building official in this case. What is the question?
My question is, let's say we deal with the height issue.
Yes.
Let's put that aside. He had corrections that he was ordered to do. We don't know if they were done. We don't really know if the rest of it was engineered correctly because we only... Hey, I'm sorry. Can you not shout out from the audience? Thank you.
Let's not have any outbursts from the... You will have an opportunity to speak, so let's...
Is there a way that we can find out later whether it was engineered correctly to make sure that it was... That it's, I mean, I know the people below have concerns about this wall collapsing. We weren't able to inspect it and then along the normal process where you inspect as each sort of component is put together in the wall.
It's probably over-designed.
I can say in the past,
everything.
in the past when we've had to go back on structures that have been built for inspection, the inspectors have requested certain excavations in certain locations and at the expense of the applicant, and then they have inspected those for consistency.
Okay. Because I know there
And
were
so in
photos,
the
but
future-
none of us sitting up here
Right.
are going to say we can look at a photo and know if something's engineered correctly.
Anything that would be approved, if at all, anything by the City Council today will be subject to a new building permit and new inspections and double discharge, and they will be asked to remove certain parts of the dirt for inspection.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. We have actually had this conversation with the building officials, Mr. Tom at the time in particular, because he was involved in that way. Tragani absolutely correct. There are ways of doing this. A lot of times, and I think the council members know at their work, staff is asked to go inspect something that has already been done. And there's ways
so
of
it's
doing
possible,
it.
so you have
Absolutely. It
confidence
is
that-
definitely possible. They do it all the time, and this would be just another process.
So just to be clear, for condition number 8,
Yes.
where it says remove portion of retaining wall, are you talking about the height or the whole retaining wall?
Yes.
A little confused about
That's all right.
what the condition is saying needs to be removed and
All right.
what's not.
Let me just.
So can you
Yes,
clearly
ma'am.
show?
I'm going to do this, and I'm going to, well, I can do it.
Maybe tell us what the height is as built and what you...
All right, so
Can
we
you show us on the other one? Because I got this, but I don't know where that lines up with the slide you just showed, like where it is on the property.
Yes, okay. Let's do this. This detail E.
Okay.
And this wall are the same ones. And these are located where the purple is.
Okay, so they would be
Purple
removing...
and red, purple and
And
red.
how much are they removing of that? Would they be required to remove?
The staff was saying, here's your 3 feet. This is what you have on a set of approved plans.
Right.
Period. Nothing above. We said, remove that, the 4 feet. Put it back up here. Maybe we might have a little bit of a freeboard to catch drainage, but put it back up here. That's what we had said. The applicant says, no. He says, I'm pulling the dirt out. Just let me keep my freestanding wall at the boundary right here.
So show me again what length of wall is that?
Yes, ma'am.
What about the wall to the left and right? Is that the same height?
Yes, but the walls in this area here start becoming higher than this wall because of topography.
Because it slopes up?
Yeah, the hill is going up in this direction and coming down in this direction. So this is going down, this is going up for both properties.
And what about for the right side?
Now the right side over here, where it breaks and comes back here, this wall is upslope. It's and I guess I lost your train of thought. What was your question on
So
that?
that would be the higher?
Yes.
wall?
No, this here. If you were to take an elevation point, that means the point of height along this whole wall. I believe this whole wall is at the same. I think that's one reason why he wanted to grade this off, because
Because their
Well,
pad looks flat. Go back 2
Yeah,
pictures.
Yeah, here we go. Now, so for instance,
So why is it?
This is that wall, that big long wall that I pointed out. And you notice that if you look at the grade, see how this grade here is? And it's going to, and the wall, this is toward the street down here, and this is going toward the backyard where the area in question is at back here, and we're going to get there. And you go to the next one, and here is the area that we're discussing as far as the fill goes. So the applicant, the difficulty for the applicant in his submittal that he got approval for is that somewhere along here, the earth was going to go from this level and drop down.
And what about the other side? What's their change of elevation? Is this wall getting higher and lower from their perspective, or is it staying? It's not staying the same the way it is here, right?
It looks like this right here.
No, from their side.
Yeah, this is the side here. So when you're looking along this edge, the top of wall here is the same height.
Yeah, but I can't see what's going on their property in terms of their grade
I
in this
know.
picture.
I'm sorry. These are actually
property
the
are you referring
applicants.
to?
These are actually the
It's on the
applicants' photograph.
Ms. Devine, you have a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
I'm sorry. ma'am.
I know that you've worked on this terribly hard.
Yes.
I just have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Will code permit that wall to remain in place if proper permits are obtained?
Yes.
Yes.
Once the land is removed from.
That'll
At
be
this
a
point
provision.
here, a freestanding wall by code is allowed. A freestanding wall is allowed on top of retaining wall by code. It can stay by code.
But not if there's dirt behind it.
Oh, no, not if it's retaining.
We have no way of
Freestanding.
knowing if the dirt's going to come back.
Well, that is an issue. One of the conditions that we had was one of the conditions is.
We just condition it, whatever we
Yes.
approve
we
here.
We have a condition right now that
What are
basically.
you going to do, send an inspector out every year?
Oh, the neighbors are right there.
The
The same
neighbors-
neighbors that created
all the neighbors are
all this
watching.
hullabaloo, they're
If I may
still
just
there.
say, one of the another reason why staff felt the better option is to move the wall away and put it up here might address your concern, because we have found over the years in the planning field for zoning purposes a self-mitigating condition, a self-enforcing condition in which you don't have to go back and monitor it or put the burden on the neighbor to monitor it. The best thing to do is just take it away. It doesn't serve a purpose here. Just put it back up here where it meets the safety, keeps people from falling down a hill. You can have a little drain board here to catch any drain, and it'll go into the drain. And this way you don't have to worry about whether this will ever get filled in through erosion or another property owner in the future down the road that might want to just say, hey, this is kind of nonsense, let's just fill it in. But we weren't completely thinking about it, but that's kind of an idea. Is it's consistent with hillside design guidelines. Since 93, 20 some odd years ago, these have been in effect. And it's self-conditioning. It takes care of itself. Yes, self-mitigating. Yes, sir. Thank you. Self-mitigating. Takes care of itself. And so for us, that's the best option. It's the least intrusive on the neighbor in a sense also because they don't have to monitor it.
Good question. Does that section of the wall also have that setback problem?
No.
7-inch or whatever issue?
No. And this is where it's also confusing too, so bear with me on this. So where do we have some difference here? Well, we're looking, in fact, that actually works quite well here. This is a property line. Property line goes right down between two walls. The one in the back that's now 7 feet high that we're talking about capping off the top floor is completely on, as you can see the little dot dash, completely on his property. And on this side over here, it's completely on theirs. So the way the code is written, this wall on his side can't be more than 3 feet at that property line. So over here, where's the property line? It's going right down here and going through some portion of that retaining wall. Keep in mind the footing is on the neighbor's side, and a portion of the retaining wall is also. So it's a common boundary wall, which you see in Glendale. It doesn't always make for best neighbors, but it's something that happens all the time. This is not a new or unusual situation. This is what we have all over the place, and people inherit these. Neither this property owner down here or this property owner were around when this wall was built in 1953. So they've inherited this issue right here, but they have to live with it. So what does that mean? That means that because this wall is on the same property as this wall, by code, you can have separation of walls on the same property and count each one as a separate unit of measurement if they're 5 feet apart. If they're not 5 feet apart, with a 2-to-1 slope, this unit of wall and this unit of wall are technically counted as a single unit for height purposes. So you're looking at whatever this height is here, 86 to 91, and up here this is like 89 or 98.7. So you're talking at a very tall unit if you want. So what we thought, well, we said we will work with them on this wall here because, and this is a big issue that I think is important, right here you'll see this green space, this planter area, which is this planter area here. Right now it's flat, right here. So this wall face is 7 feet. So the applicant said, I'm going to mitigate this first. The only issue I want you to advertise is to make sure that the distance of less than 5 feet between these walls, 4 feet 5 inches, is going to be the only issue we advertise. Because I'm going to make this wall 5 feet, which is allowed by code. I'm going to pour the dirt up here like this. Now this creates another problem for us that I found out later during these appeals, and that at this point there's going to be a request or need to, because this neighbor has been complaining all along about soil running down the hill on them. Because it's flat now, the soil is less likely so. Historically, though, that's been one of the beefs they had. Now that when we raise this up, there has to be some resolution about adding blocks here to a wall that was built in the 50s. The talk about not knowing how this was built, that's going to be something who's going to bear that burden? And it doesn't seem like there's going to be a very happy resolution of that. But somewhere along the line, either the dirt's going to keep running off, or there's going to be some type of a catch board up there to let the wall go. Anyway.
Or the 2-to-1 slope, you put it
a little lower
4 to 6 inches below, so it is caught. You don't have to end any block in above, right? That's what we talked about, Chris.
Yes, sir,
right?
we could do that. It would mean that this wall, if the council's okay with allowing this wall instead of being 5 foot, which is what the code would allow, to be 6 foot, something along that way we can avoid, we can bring the dirt down. This becomes the freeboard, that's the better word. The freeboard, catch the drainage at the base, and just have the slope come up here, and this height only be at a 2-to-1 slope, and that just be, let's say, 5.5 to 6 feet.
Before they built that new wall on the right, what was it? Was it all dirt behind that, the old wall?
It was a slope. It was a slope that went up the hill. I don't know at what point here it was, but it was a slope up the hill. The reason it's hard to tell is that when you go back here to the very beginning, see what it looks like, and I almost didn't want to put this picture in it, but there it is. This is why you can't really tell the slope. This is what it looked like prior to any of the walls. These are the stairs right here. And
so the whole point of this
the
exercise with these retaining walls,
oh yes,
the whole point was to turn this, which looks like a hillside house, a house on a natural slope, to create a flat pad around this house. To put a bunch of walls up, to lift the yard up, to create a flat pad, and then to sort of wall the yard off from the street. And our hillside guideline doesn't say anything about that, where people are allowed to just take hillsides and turn them into flat lots. I thought that's what the hillside guidelines were trying to prevent.
I mentioned the staff report. Even if this was built letter perfect to the hillside design guidelines in the wall heights, you're still going to get something that looks like this. This would be pushed back 5 feet, so an extra 7 inches further this way. It would probably be in reality in a better shape, about a block or two lower.
What about the front? The hillside guidelines is silent about slopes in the front of properties?
Well, no, ma'am, it's not. The zoning code itself. However, a wall right here could actually be all the way down the street property line. There's a 5-foot curb to property line. The property line actually is back here. So technically, we allow 7-foot high walls to be all the way down here.
They have to go to design review? There's no design review process for a wall like this?
Kick in design review depending on the situation.
Could this have kicked in?
This would have.
We missed that one.
This one would have. We would have required it to be subject to design review.
Today's environment. There's a lot of history to this as well that I don't want to segue into that.
A question.
But I want to be able to mention this, ma'am, that a wall can be brought down here, and here's the one caveat. I know this is kind of complicated. If this wall here was cut into the hill so that the dirt, so you have to have basically, let's think of a cliff. That cliff comes straight out like this and down here. They could cut in and put a 7-foot high wall right there on the street property line.
Wait. I don't know what you're talking about, a cliff. There was a sort of a slow grade in the front of the house. I mean, the side was cut, obviously, to create the pad for the house next door.
They did pile dirt in there now.
I get it,
Yeah,
but
yes,
the front of this house had sort of a gentle slope. There's no cliff.
That's correct.
What are you talking about, a cliff?
Yes. What I'm trying to mention is this. Under the design guide, you're asking, can they build this?
Forget about can. A house like this that gently slopes from the street down,
They
what
cannot
would be
build
the
it.
justification?
They can't.
Would they be allowed to do what they did, which basically put a giant wall into
No, they wouldn't have. They would not have. To the extent that a wall would have been allowed, it would have been a short wall that would have been under the grade. And the second they start building on top of the grade, then they would be violating the rules.
Ms. Devine?
Yes. Mr. Back, this is not part of the appeal, is it? So this has nothing to do except for the veneer. So
At this point,
yeah.
what the hearing officer heard, what the planning commission heard, this is not an issue.
Is this a de novo hearing?
Yes.
So it is part of it.
Well, only if it's raised otherwise.
It's a de novo hearing, so I can talk about the unpermitted wall in the front.
Yes, correct.
This is absolutely within our purview, correct?
Well, yes, it is a de novo hearing, so there's wide discretion to approve or deny, but my understanding is they could build part of it to comply with code. In that case, it's not really then part of the hearing. There's nothing to hear if it's going to comply with code.
If I may say, again, there were 3 issues that were problems, that were zoning violations, and the applicant said, I want to eliminate all the issues except one, and that is the distance between the back of this wall and here. He says, I can't do that. To push this wall back right here 7 inches further that busts the bank.
Impossible.
Why don't we get the applicants up here and we can still go back to staff.
All these
after we've
issues,
heard them.
there's a solution.
Right.
They've already
Right.
given it to us.
Listen, this to me, this may not be a huge case, this may not be controversial, but it's complicated, and I'm trying to understand also our process of what happened, because it helps guide staff for the next time something like this happens. So far what I'm seeing, putting aside your stuff with the sidewall, I'm seeing a wall illegally constructed in the front of a property. To me, it looks like in a way that we would never allow today by our hillside guidelines and our design review, and yet the staff recently permitted that, didn't condition it, and I don't understand why that wasn't part of this.
I'm sorry. Recently, staff never permitted this.
Didn't you permit it now? I mean, isn't it?
No, this is.
So they're removing all of that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, they're removing. I know you talked about the side portion. I'm talking about everything in the front.
Up here, this.
I got the corner. What about the rest of the wall? To the right, on the front
All
portion.
that going through, the one that is not there
All
anymore?
of that over
Okay.
there. Yeah.
This is this now.
Okay. Is that because they put dirt there in front of it? The wall's still there. They just put dirt in front of it.
May I say something, Ms. Friedman?
just ask what
I spent
happened?
3 hours in the planning department twice to understand this. You have not done it.
Mr.
You're
Weaver,
holding us all
Mr. Weaver,
hostage.
I looked at all the plans. I'm trying.
You
I
didn't
was
go
just
over
told
there.
that the wall was gone, and
You're
he says
asking
it's there
all
under
the
dirt.
questions that there's already answers to. This is a simple solution, and you're going back to ground zero
I would like to understand what
Why
happened.
didn't you go to planning? Did you go and see Chris Baxter? Did you go and see Mr. Haqqani? Did you see any of them?
I am allowed to ask, Mr. Sinani and Mr. Mayor, am I allowed to ask these questions?
You have for
This
30
thing?
minutes.
Ask my colleague to can it.
30 minutes worth.
Mr. Mayor, can
You're
you
holding
please
us
ask my colleague
hostage.
to stop
Why don't
yelling
we-
at me?
Hey, I'll be glad to go home and you can talk all night.
Go home, Mr. Weaver. We've seen you do it many times.
get along.
Why should tonight be any different than the other nights where you got up and
Why
left
don't
before the
we,
end of the meeting?
why don't we just, do you have more questions, Ms. Friedman?
I'm trying to just find out about that wall in the front. It's still there, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Because the neighbors brought this up, and I would like to understand what happened here. So that wall is still there. It's just been put dirt in front of it.
Yes, and from what we understand, the applicant has said that in order to alleviate that issue and bring it to compliance, he's willing to cut the wall down to the grade level, no more than 18 inches above the actual grade of the dirt.
Yes, ma'am. He's going to make this wall, he's going to make this wall here comply with code, as well as this portion of the wall on the side comply with code.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter. Now I have a better understanding of what's
Yes,
been
ma'am.
done and what's been proposed.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter.
Yes.
Don't go too far. I'd like to give the applicants the opportunity to present their case to the extent they believe something needs to be presented or address any of the issues that you thought were important. How much time do you need? I'm opening the hearing. How much time do you need?
I don't know, 10, 15 minutes.
Well, no, let's.
Okay, we'll just go, we'll make it quick, as quick as possible.
Yes. Why don't we keep it to 7 minutes? Because if you have more to, we have one speaker that's going to speak on this issue other than you. I'll allow you to come back to the extent there needs to be a rebuttal, but don't take 15 minutes, please.
Mr. Baxter is a very verbose guy. He's convincing people a lot.
Great.
And, well, basically, I don't know where to start. There's so many things,
Just start where you're going to solve it.
Mr. Baxter showed that picture. It was very old. That wall we cut, per his request, he said we don't like that, so we cut down. We cut it down to 10 inches. It's allowed by 18 inches tall wall in the front. We cut that down and we veneered it. And then when we built the wall, we turned the corner by about a couple of feet. And then, when you build this wall, just from the front, you see no wall. If this wall comes, all of a sudden stops. So you got to have a little return. So we returned the wall a couple of feet, and then once that garden wall, they have to merge together, so close up the gap.
You need a pointer.
So
you need a pointer.
Can we provide him a laser pointer?
The picture that Mr. Baxter showed is very old, and we had some pilasters and all that grouting that he was showing. And then he requested that we remove the pilasters. We removed the pilasters. Then he came back. He said the wall is too tall, this and that. So we removed the wall. A couple of courses, get it down to 10 inches. The code allows 18 inches tall wall. So, and then we veneered it. He requested that we veneered it also. So, and then when we built this wall, we had to have a little return here. And, to fill the dirt back. You can't have, a retaining wall coming all of a sudden dying and with nothing. You have the dirt behind this portion, and all of a sudden comes here, stops. You gotta have something to support the dirt. So we had a couple of feet here, return to backfill the dirt, so the dirt doesn't look weird. And then we merged these two walls together. But actually, we cut this wall down. And then, that's that portion. And then he said that this portion, we proposed that to cut this stepwise down like this, like a V, inverted V. To cut that down so it conforms to the garden 18-inch high walls in that area. So it conforms to the code. And then, let me see what else. Yeah, we pulled the permit to construct
Mr. Mayor, sorry.
Yes.
We're gonna have to keep that. That's going to be introduced as evidence as part of the hearing.
Are you okay with that? That's going
We'll
to
go back
become
after
part of the record, so you have to give that up at the end of the presentation.
we pulled the permit to construct the wall.
Is that a yes?
You just hold it. Yeah, you want me to hold it? Okay.
Okay,
we pulled the permit.
Let me ask you a question. That if you present it to us, it has to become part of the record. We have to keep it. You okay with that?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Hold on, let's do it closer so everybody. Actually, we pulled the permit to construct the wall. We pulled the permit, and it was stamped as design review exempt.
Okay.
And then the wall at the front, that portion that was its subject, it was this portion was approved. We were stated that it can be 7 feet, and I saw no problem in that. And then he said the back portion it can be 3 feet from the existing grade, not from top of the neighbor's wall. And that seemed everything fine to me, And then this was the original look of the house. You see the original wall is that high, and this is the roof of our adjacent, the project, structure. And this is the top of the wall existing. As you can see, this is a backyard. This portion is the backyard. This is the house. The pool is in here, which goes 7 feet high. The pool portion goes 7 feet high, and they have their wall becomes tall. The neighbor's wall, it goes like this, and it becomes very high here too. It's 9 feet tall wall, neighbor's wall, 9 feet, and then here it becomes almost 8 feet. This is the profile. This is the profile of the wall, existing neighbor's wall. So this portion is 9 feet and 6 feet, and this is 8 feet. The neighbor's wall. When they constructed their wall, it was so tall, they caused the grade to cave. They caused the damage. And then we repaired that damage by our piles. And then, what else? This portion of the wall was permitted to be 7 feet per planner. And I saw no problem with that. And then he said, 3 feet from the existing grade, not top of the neighbor's wall. And then, we were intending to backfill that dirt. Original contour of the grade. This is the contour. This is the house, and this is the original contours. 98. And 98, 96, 94, 92. These are the contours. If you look at that dirt, this contour is higher than what it's now. These contours are higher than what the dirt is now. It's pretty much, plus and minus. And then the plan checker gave us 7 feet tall, allowed 7 feet tall construction in here and from the dirt. We didn't put the dirt back in. The neighbor asked, don't put this dirt on because I want to do planting here. So we kept this flat. And then, in fact, and then, now, well, basically, this is the portion that's in question. We are appealing the condition by the Eric Cross. In order to clarify this, I came up with 3 sections. Sections cut, E and C. That's E as at the low end, M is at the middle portion, and this is C. The grade at this point is low at 92, according to those contours that I showed it to you. It intersects the wall at 92 feet.
How much longer do you think you
elevation.
have? How much longer do you think you have?
Just to clarify this, per that section. I'm pretty much.
You're almost done? No, it's okay. Just take another 5 minutes.
This is 92 feet. 93 and 94. The grade intersects at that point. And then if I put 3 feet on top of that, this is 97, becomes 97 here, 96 here, and 95 here. That's where that allowable height of the dirt.
Sorry, we have a question.
I'm sorry, this is so above my head. You're an engineer. I'm not an engineer. Can you maybe just explain why you disagree with the conditions that the staff put? Maybe you can just start
First of all, we pulled the permit with a clear understanding what it was, and all of a sudden we start dealing with planning department, individuals. They start changing things and all that. We start caught by surprise, and we try to conform, to their requirements, and we worked with Chris Baxter to come up with solution that satisfied their requirement. And all of a sudden, then we went through the variance and all that, and Eric Cross came up with some surprise, something that we were not expecting. He all of a sudden said, you have to remove the wall completely. This is
the microphone.
This is at the corner.
Microphone won't be able to pick you up.
This is the corner of concern. Basically, I want to go quick. This is a pile installation. We got approval on the piles. This is the grade beam that supports, distributes the load. That's a grade beam distributes the load on top of the piles, and this is the block construction on top of the grade beam. The grade beam comes here and steps on two blocks, steps up and travels. So Mr. Cross is saying, remove all this wall down to the grade beam, where this drainage, travels around here with a gravel ramp, and once we remove all this.
Mr. Mayor, the microphone is not going to be able to pick up any of this gentleman's testimony unless he speaks directly into it.
And once we remove the block down to here, it kills everything.
Kills what?
The drainage pipe that travels around here is going to kill that.
What do you mean by it's going to kill that?
I mean, drainage pipe, there's a hydrostatic pressure relief, a drain pipe here. It travels here. And he's saying, remove all this, and this is a concrete. You can't put any you can't put any drainage or V-drains or any of that stuff in here.
The lot has to drain to the front street.
Okay,
back
makes
to
sense.
the front.
So that would negate a working drainage system.
Yeah, and see, there's one drain in here, hydrostatic relief pressure. It travels all the way to the street and drains into the street, to the curbs, with the cast iron and all that, with all these complications. Okay. And then there's another drain on top of the wall that it has a concrete V-drain that guides the water all the way to the street. And then there's another pipe right directly under the concrete gutter that they complement each other for overflow purposes.
But it could.
So they travel, and all the way, and they dump the water to the street.
I'm probably going to ask the same question. Could the drainage system be arranged or designed in such a way prior to building that wall where it would work otherwise, without the existence of that wall? Again, I'm not an engineer, so...
Of course.
Yeah. Could the drainage system...
Don't be shy. I'm looking at you.
Could the drainage system have been constructed or designed, whatever you call it, in a way alternative to that before this wall arose, before you build that wall? Am I confusing you? Am I confusing my colleagues?
Yes. When they're done, I can sum it up in 2 minutes.
I would love that.
Yeah. Why don't we do this?
I would love that.
Why don't you...
This is the area that Mr. Cross is asking. He's asking to remove this and this. And the grade beam is directly under it. Yeah, of course. And then...
Why don't...
This is the original look. This is the new look. The vegetation has covered the wall.
Okay.
There's no need to put the veneer on it.
Okay.
This vegetation, you have to have a couple of 10 workers to come and yank it out.
Okay. So let's make this a little more bearable.
I mean,
other than the issue of the wall that would create a problem with the drainage system, what other condition imposed by the city are you in disagreement with? Just give us boom.
Basically,
That's it, right? Is that it?
Basically, we want the block wall at least to a reasonable extent to stay, rather than to remove the whole wall. It's good nonsense to remove the whole wall from the top of the grade beam.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Why don't you take a seat? If we need to ask you questions, we'll ask you to come back. Mr. Weaver, you want to go before
I can wrap it up in a minute or two. One, all their permits expired. You have to pull a new permit. You got to work with planning and building and safety to do what you want to do. You're going to lower that front corner, or already have done it, down, making a V in there. That takes care of the one condition you're concerned about. On the back, you leave the freestanding wall.
Mm-hmm.
You slope the material in the back on a 2-to-1 slope, about 6 inches below the back, so there's no slough off going into the neighbor's yard. You plant that. We make a condition that you plant that slope, and you can never, ever fill it in. And all of that is done to the satisfaction of, because we got to look at the drainage pattern and stuff, but it can all be cleared up with a new permit from planning and building and safety. You're done. That takes care of all your problems.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
That's it.
God bless engineers. Speaking to the microphone.
Neighbors, how come neighbors' wall, which is, in my property,
wait.
is okay?
Don't start going with the
Well, it's not an
neighbors.
issue right now. So, I mean, if you,
We'll try to work with you.
The veneer,
Just
how about the veneer?
planning and building and safety. They won't need the veneer because they're going to be down so low, it won't show. Plus, once you get 5 or 6 feet in, you're going to have all that vegetation that's already there covered.
Right.
You couldn't put any veneer there anyhow.
Okay, excellent.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, if I may sum up what Mr. Weaver just said, so that we can understand what we're writing. If this is a desire of the council, then
we still have.
have
I'm sorry, it's a public
Yeah,
hearing still on. We have a speaker. Let's do that. I'm sure if need be,
Then you
Mr.
can
Weaver
sum
will
it up.
repeat what he said. That's much shorter than anything we've heard so far. So, Lydia Shabestari. Yeah.
They've all, which,
It's a lot of talking. Audience, I'm having problems.
Yeah. Scott. That's our staff.
Good evening. My name is Lydia.
How much time do you
Shabastari.
need?
I'm sorry?
How much time do you think you need?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Great.
I am the neighbor on the downward slope of 1551. I'm asking the City Council to vote in favor of the third motion to reverse the Planning Commission's decision to deny the setback variance and to direct the city attorney to prepare findings. The reason for this is the wall as it was built it was permitted up until the footing stage as the appellant has described. The remainder of the wall was not built with inspection or observation by city of structural engineers, geotechnical engineers, and inspectors, building and safety inspectors. I've had numerous conversations with the city structural engineer and with the planning department. So this is not something that I have made up. This is based on their comments. You have a document in front of you which, if you would read, provides many factual reasons why I'm requesting this motion, number 3, to be upheld. The wall was built as is without a completed permit, and it doesn't comply with the zoning codes. The appellant mentioned just now that the wall was approved at 7 feet. The planning department actually made a mistake, an error on the plans to allow the wall to be 6 foot 6 inches when the code requires it to be 5 feet. According to the structural engineer, there are so many issues, most of them is outlined under number 3, that are unknown factors that create a condition in which we don't know the soundness of this wall. He also made comments about the fill that was used, and because they don't know what kind of fill was used, what kind of gravel was put down at the bottom, what kind of drainage system was installed, if it was installed at all, and if it was installed correctly. There's no knowledge of compaction of the soil that's supposed to take place when a retaining wall is built and the soil is coming. And there isn't the proper kind of drainage system built, wasn't on the plans and was not built on the top to handle the soil or the water runoff that comes down from the hill. This is an image of what existed prior to his remodeling of the home. You can see in the front area by the street a gentle slope. There was no wall and these conifers. On the side, there was a significant slope between our property common wall and their structure. You also notice that there are a number of trees and bushes that provided somewhat of a privacy screen. When the wall was constructed, all of those plant materials and trees were removed. The soil level that has been is now at the same height of the retaining wall. They do not have a safety fence on that retaining wall, and so it is very easy for someone, if they came onto the property, to fall over into our property, which creates a liability for us. And that's also a safety feature. Our privacy has been completely removed. If you'll move to the next photo, some of these images that I have show what existed in the early phases of the wall development. The reason why I'm showing these is to demonstrate that the appellant has added soil to reduce the height of the wall that's in the front, and also applied more soil to the side yard. When we had the existing slope between the two properties, we had constant soil erosion that would dump into our side yard, and oftentimes it became mud when it was raining. It clogged up our drainage system and backed up water on our side yard. We asked over a number of years for him to put in plants to help to prevent this soil erosion from occurring. He did not. Finally, he came to us with the idea that, let me add a few blocks to the wall to catch this soil from eroding into your yard. We were at a loss of what to do, and so we said, okay, put the blocks on, because we were having this problem for years.
The erosion problem?
The erosion problem.
So they didn't cause it?
They caused the soil erosion problem by not planting that on their slope, plants that would retain the soil. So it was there were periodic conifers low, let's say 2 feet low, and so the soil continuously came down. Okay. So this wall was built.
You have a lot left?
No.
Okay, then complete your statement.
Okay. So this wall was built without permits, without observation of the inspectors that were required to be able to guarantee that the wall is safe. The planning department, the building and safety department, the structural engineer cannot guarantee the safety of this wall. If this wall were to fail, it could cause significant or total damage to my home, and if we were in the home, it could endanger our lives. So I'm asking the City Council to uphold the motion number 3 so that the wall can be corrected, the safety issues can be addressed, the proper drainage to be installed, and for it to pass all the permits and building inspections that are required of anyone else that builds a retaining wall in the City of Glendale. Also, if you would continue with the photos very quickly.
So you said you don't have too much left. I mean, how much?
Just go through the photos just to explain.
How many photos? Okay, just take another 2 minutes and let's complete.
There are 6 more. This is the corner of the wall that shows the height. Continue going, please. This shows from the street view the height of the wall. Continue, please. This shows the blocks that were added to the wall. So the soil level used to fall below those courses. And he has since added more soil, and he also wants to apply soil, put on more blocks on that wall, and add soil to reduce the visible height of his overly tall wall. That wall was built in 1950. It wasn't built to handle additional load of more blocks and more soil. If the wall were to fail, then it would also incur significant costs and loss on my part. The final, keep going, please. Keep going. This is where it is now. This shows that the appellant has added soil from what had existed before. Please continue. This shows it from the top view looking down, and you can see the common wall below. Keep going. There's soil erosion that's occurring now, and anytime we've had a light rain, we have a mud river that goes down our street. Please continue. This shows that the drainage is not maintained. It's clogged with plant material. Keep going. This is the view from our second level. You'll notice that there is a person in front of the slider door. When we go out into our backyard, they oftentimes come out and look into our yard. Continue. And this is the view from their property looking down into ours. We have no privacy. This is an expensive home. It's impacted my property values. Something needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Weaver.
Let me summarize again. They have to pull a new permit for everything. Structural engineers, whatever, will go out and look. I'm seeing the rebar in the cells on top of the grade beam wall. And of course, we would verify the stability of that. We're not going to permit any wall that is not stable.
Right.
And with the 2-to-1 slope on up, they will be at a distance where they can't look down into the yard if the free standing wall is there.
If that is the direction of the council.
That's the direction, and that solves all the problems.
Okay.
And no veneer.
Probably not necessary.
How would you address the
I'm
veneer?
going to close the public hearing, so let's discuss among ourselves. Yes.
I can address the veneer, I think. Do you want me to address the veneer?
Go ahead.
Ms. Devine?
Well, the veneer was according to the code, if walls are intersecting, they prefer that the veneer is wrapped around, that the walls are similar. In this case, he's removing the corner so that the walls will not be intersecting. So the veneer can stop at the front wall. There will be a space, a large space in between. The south wall will remain the same, but the vegetation and the trees are grown all the way up to the top. You can't even see the wall now. So therefore, the veneer is not really necessary. Do you agree, Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Friedman?
Well, I appreciate your patience, Mr. Snanian, with my asking questions. I'm not an engineer, and I do work, so I can't spend 3 hours with staff all the time as much as I'd like to. So this is complicated, and you could tell by the appellant's presentation how complicated this is. And I don't like to vote on something unless I understand what's happening. So I have a few more questions. I'm concerned by the neighbors' photos of new dirt walls that don't have any new dirt slopes that are much steeper than what was there previously, that don't have any vegetation on them. You can see the erosion in the pictures, and I think a light rain would bring those walls down. So is there any requirement or plan to deal with those new steep dirt slopes?
If the council decides to go with the direction that Mr. Weaver and Ms. Devine have directed, then we would ask the council to condition the removal of the wall to be back to the original grade and consistent with the zoning code and requirements as they would have applied at that grade level, and all of the additional dirt that has been added to be removed accordingly. So that would be the condition.
It doesn't sound like it sounds like my colleagues are fine with just leaving it as it is, unless I'm hearing them wrong.
I think that this was based on the proposal that the appellant has made to remove the corner front wall within the front yard setback, and to remove where the two walls connect completely down to the grade level.
Right, but the photo that she just showed of that slope.
Right, on the side.
Where was that? That was on the side. So how does that get dealt with?
That would take us back to the other issue that Mr. Baxter has talked about, and Mr. Baxter wants to address that. Please come up, Chris. And then in that case, I think Mr. Weaver and Ms. Devine mentioned removing the backfilled dirt from the back of the wall and letting the wall be a freestanding wall, and filling that area which is now filled with dirt instead with vegetation to maintain the slope to 2-to-1 slope with a little brim at the end.
Is that the photo that she showed? Because I'm not sure where
that would be the changing that photo. That's the current condition. If this condition would be applicable, then the slope slope would be removed, all of the dirt would be removed, and the freestanding wall would stand there. That would not be the way it looks today.
And staff would have to approve every step of the way with that new permit they will have to get.
Yes, and by the way, all of the permits would be subject to double fee, and they would be brand new permits.
See, I mean, the other thing that concerns me besides the engineering, and I can totally understand the neighbors' fear here, because we have a retaining wall, which is not a garden fence. It's holding back dirt that, for whatever reason, they didn't think they decided that they didn't need to follow the city's procedures and they wouldn't get it inspected, and that's concerning to me. And you say that they can go back and they can now inspect it and they can tell that it's safe. I'll take you at your word, but I can understand the neighbors being nervous about that. But putting that aside for a minute, I also understand the neighbors being upset with a house next to them that had a slope to where people outside were sloping down, and then you raise that whole level, and now those people are towering above their backyard. And that's, if that was me, I would be very unhappy about that. So is that something that our code just allows, or would you have approved that? And, I mean, what's your feeling about that at this point?
I think that's part of the reason why we've been in this struggle with the appellant from the get-go. Chris, would you like to address this? No, we would not have allowed this, and that's been part of the issue.
Well, if I may say, Mayor and Councilmember Friedman, let me do this real quick so you guys can kind of get an idea. This isn't a fair picture, if you don't mind, since these are pictures that we don't have, and I have not seen these other than just being on the field now and then. So the problem is, Councilmember Friedman, a lot of these walls can be built by code. That's the problem. Now, this corner here cannot. It cannot be. As Mr. Ghani had mentioned, this front wall is going to be, when it goes into plan check, this front wall has to be brought to meet code.
I got it. Their concern is about the backyard, that the neighbors have basically raised their whole yard up so that now they're above them. It's like they built a deck. They basically built a yard deck that's now above them. And Mr. Hagani just said they wouldn't have approved that. Or did you say you would have?
If I may say, this is where it gets confusing.
Yeah, okay.
In the back is not this. This is not the back. This is the street. You're looking
I understand. She showed a different photo. She showed the photo from her backyard.
Oh, yes. Okay, so, yes, I understand where you are. Right here.
No, let him go through
Right
first.
here. This is the area right here.
Exactly.
That's in question.
And before that was a slope. Now it's like a giant deck that sticks out, or someone can stand right up above their house.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. The entire wall, which wasn't there, it was a slope. It wasn't necessarily a gentle slope, but it was a slope that came down the hill. The applicant then put the wall, part of which he had approvals for. So let's understand that he had approvals for a good bit of the wall. He just didn't build up to the way the approved plans were.
Right. It kind of would have gone to that line, that dark line that's there.
If I may, the distinction is what would have been approved would be a separation wall, not a retaining wall. The way that it has been built has been
They're going to have to put a
and that would not have been allowed. As a retaining wall, to be backfilled with dirt and flatten the lot, it would not have been allowed. However, as a separation wall, it might have been, or a fence.
But now it's a retaining wall.
Now it is a retaining
with dirt behind it. The whole purpose was to raise their yard.
That is the real distinction there.
Ms. Devine?
Mr. Baxter.
Yes, ma'am.
They're interested in privacy. If you remove that wall, there will be no privacy. What we're talking about is leaving the wall, getting a permit for that wall, because the wall, as you said, is permitted by code. It is permitted by code, correct?
It could be. They could get a permit, yes.
Okay.
Not for that
It can be permitted. Okay. And so then if they remove, and they want to remove the backfill so that there will be a grade there and behind. So it will be a freestanding wall. And then if they plant vegetation again on that slant, on that slope, that will even give them more privacy. And plus the fact you won't be able to, if you're standing back, you don't see as much of the property as if they leave it flat, leave that wall, and look over. So actually, by removing the backfill, the neighbor gets more privacy.
So you're saying the neighbors should be happy, but they're not happy, so something's wrong here.
I think what you see, and Mr. Baxter certainly can attest to it, that this has happened over the course of years. that this has gone on. This is, and so I think there is no perfect solution for what we have. Both people have their rights and their desire for the use of their property. Your analogy of that earthen deck is quite apt. I mean, that's basically what you have today. But in terms, I don't think anybody is going to get everything they want. I think what's been proposed in terms of reinstituting the slope, making sure it's vegetated so somebody can't walk to the edge of that earthen deck any longer, is what will give privacy and also at the same time yield some sense of safety to the appellant, because that wall that was done without a permit will no longer be retaining earth. Now, that only works as long as the earth does not flow back into that area, which I think gets back to the recommendation with respect to a self-imposing kind of condition. Once the slope is put in place, and the condition being that it is ultimately landscaped so the slope doesn't fall. I don't think anybody is going to be entirely happy with this, but that does seem the splitting of the baby.
Well, I don't care so much about the stone veneer part, because I do think that will be covered with vegetation and the removing part of the wall. But I do agree with the staff on conditions number 8 and 10. So my vote would be, I would be okay with not doing the veneer, which is condition number 9, but not 8 and 9. I mean, not 8 and 10. You know, if it was me, I just look at these and I think, what if it was me? You know, if I was the neighbor. Besides the fact that they just built a giant deck next to me, basically looking into my yard, I don't know what the neighbors think, but to go from having sort of a short wall there with vegetation behind it to a very giant wall with no vegetation looks, you know, it's you're putting your neighbor into a canyon.
Yes.
So that's why I think that wall should be moved back, because it gives you a chance then to plant something substantial in between, right? Doesn't?
Yes, I hope everybody understands what these conditions are about. It's less than what you, if I may.
Yeah.
We're not talking about moving any of this wall back. There's a portion of the wall right here that is now retaining. Retaining means it's holding earth back.
Right, I understand. You want to remove that dirt.
Remove the dirt, but it's only for a portion
right
here, for this portion right here. And when they remove that portion, then this part will be freestanding, just like a boundary fence wall. And we're saying take that and push it back.
Right.
It does not affect it over here. And this is the deck over here. But he is basically built per code here. There's some problems, as I mentioned, it's too close by 7 inches, but basically he built what he was allowed to here. I guess that's what he showed us. But here, he did not build this according to the plan, and it's also inconsistent with the zoning ordinance.
Well, I think that staff did a good job of trying to work with the applicants, you know, and approve as much as you could approve. And I understand the neighbors' concerns. And I understand that the applicants, the appellants, don't want to have to do any of this. That's why they're here, or do very much of it. But I would uphold the staff conditions for 8 and 10, like I said. And I'm okay with, if my colleagues want to kind of grant 9 or make 9 disappear with the veneer, that's okay with me too.
No, sir. No, thank you. Okay.
Let me just be clear. Condition 8, removing a portion of the retaining wall, is in which section of that wall, Mr. Baxter? Is that the section where we're talking about right there?
Okay.
Section.
One moment, sir.
And that's where it doesn't comply with the zoning, right?
It's in the back. Yes, sir.
Okay, that's like where the gentleman's standing, or the person's standing.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
Okay, condition 8. Yes, that is correct. Because what they said to us, we don't want to have a variance hearing on this right here.
Okay. Is condition 8 consistent with the offer or the requirement to remove the earth so that it's not a retaining wall anymore and that it remains a boundary wall? 3 feet of retaining, the rest a separation wall.
Why don't you just let me construct a motion that...
All right, let me go.
I would love
Let me go to Weaver.
Weaver.
I see.
I make the motion that all the proper permits be pulled from the city, which will entail removing the corner of the wall at the front of the house, retaining the freeboard on the back portion, removing the earth and creating a 2-to-1 slope 6 inches below the existing wall to handle slough runoff. Landscaping that slope for permanent maintenance as a slope with vegetation. And let's see, what else?
So none of the conditions that the staff imposed. You're not.
Well, he did.
No.
No,
he
wait,
didn't mention
I am.
those.
Let's just make clear. So you're going to make a motion to approve the appellant's appeal to remove all of those conditions,
Right. You're saying
and
to
add
remove
new
the staff's
and add new conditions.
Yeah, the new conditions we talked about, because that solves all their problems.
And if I may just say, there's only one thing that I'd like to clarify because it will make it'll be a mistake. I just want to make sure for staff. So, but I'm sorry.
Well, because having made that motion, when they pulled the permits, planning and buildings department will make certain that there's slope to drain on the wall. They will check the structural integrity of the existing wall. Nothing will go away. We don't need to spell all that out because the staff will do that. They're under a microscope,
yes,
the builder and our departments. Well, that's my motion.
This doesn't go. This does not uphold our zoning, right? This would be contrary to our zoning. This motion.
It would
no,
because you'd be granting the variance. The variance is necessary
You're giving a variance, in other words.
Right. Yeah, that's
So
what
we're
we're hearing.
saying, so they built without permit, and we're basically giving them a variance for something that we wouldn't have allowed. If they had come to us for a permit, we wouldn't have done this without a variance hearing.
And that's why we're here. We're granting the variance, and they still have to go get their permits. So you really don't even need a condition that they get their permits. That's going to be required.
I would only support the staff. I said conditions number 8 and conditions 10 so that it falls within our zoning code.
Mr. Mayor and Ms. Friedman, that's not completely correct, if I may just say.
Can I point out, I made a
because
motion.
I can show you something.
Is there a second on my motion?
Second.
Can we just, a couple of things, can we just maybe Hassan can, on the last one, the landscaping, should it be for permanent vegetation subject to approval of the CD director?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to approve a plan?
Permanent vegetation to the satisfaction of the Community Development Department.
On the 2-to-1 slope area.
And the 2-to-1 slope.
That's what you seconded.
need to have
right? No, that's what you seconded.
someone look at it who knows what vegetation is going to hold
Correct.
slope. You can't just say put something green. It's got to be able to hold that slope.
Yeah, so landscaping plan approved by the CD director.
Yeah. Staff will
There you
take
go.
care of it.
Condition number 6, ma'am, states that the landscaping and irrigation plan prepared and wet stamped by a landscape architect and licensed by.
That's already there.
Okay. Let's have roll call.
Council members Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
No.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian.
Yes.
Just for the record, that was
Okay.
Keep it down, don't call us.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Next.
oh, sorry, I just want to make sure. 1 second before we go to the next
Okay,
item.
just give it 1 second.
On 9A, so that's really it's really 9A1, but you made the motion, and we can make the changes to the motion without having to come back to the council.
Okay.
Please do so. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Mayor and Council, item on this agenda is oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision, and the city manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for an investigation and report.
Thank you. For Speaker Mike Mohill, 5 minutes, followed by Aram Kazazian.
Mayor Sinanian, council members, my name is Mike Mohill. Mayor Sinanian, thank you very much for allowing the public additional time to speak on the proposed water rate increase. The public additional time also for the agenda and hearing issue. I'm sure the public appreciates the time you've given us without crossing the T's and dotting the I's. Mrs. Devine, it was only because of the legal efforts of Professor Harry Zavos and others that this council only a couple of years ago stopped transferring money from the water side of GWP to the general fund. Councilwoman Devine, your council colleagues have the audacity to implement water and electric rate increases and then transfer that money from the general fund to to pay the bloated salaries and pension of our CalPERS union workforce. Mrs. Devine, you will soon learn by following the money why council have been pro-growth and friendly with big business these past several years. Just look at the lifestyle of some of our council members whose council income is only about $30,000 and the way they live. As you know, $30,000 does not bring much food to the table. Look at the felon, John Draymond, and his sense of entitlement. Mrs. Devine, you are a person of means, and I hope and I encourage you not to follow the footsteps of your colleagues. You have nothing to lose but to gain. If you do not have a consensus with Nigerian Weaver or Friedman, just look at what they have done to our beautiful city and their legacy of a sense of entitlement. I hope during your tenure, you will always keep your integrity and accountability as you showed last Tuesday night. Please do not allow our city manager and council members, Freeman, Nigerian, and Weaver, to corrupt your integrity. I hope when you retire from council, you will leave behind a positive legacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohill.
I feel assaulted. I just want you to know. I feel as though Mr. Mohill has assaulted me, and that seems to be his MO, is to come up throwing lies at council and to our viewing audience. I feel violated.
Oh, sorry about that, Mr. Nigerian. Next speaker is Aram Kazazian, who does not appear to be in the chambers. Therefore, I call Tamara Grigorian and Mr. Garcia. We have a request which is kind of unusual. This speaker is asking to also for her mother to yield her 5 minutes to her so she can speak at all. Is that something?
That's not something we've ever retained before, and obviously for the obvious reason, I think once you start giving that to one person, you'll get more and more requests, and so I'd recommend not do that.
So 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, good evening to all respectable council members and all attendants here in the audience. This is my third time speech. I had my speeches during the last year. I believe it was September or October of 2013. I represented my mother's interests, who sustained lifetime injuries inflicted by the city of Glendale and the commercial building owner Gagik Muradian. That's the first case that she was involved. The second case that she was involved and sustained injuries was at the city clerk's office last July 1st, 2013. And that was caused by the negligence in that case, where the city is alleged and accused in the case number 551-511. Honorable City Attorney, you will be served with that papers next week. Mr. Mayor Sinanian, Honorable Mayor, how many times I have requested to you, as that was like 2 weeks ago, for an appointment. I understand your Secretary Miriam called me on your behalf and she extended a courtesy, scheduling an appointment, but thereafter she screwed me up, scheduling, canceling, changing, and then insisting upon not meeting with you. I clearly explained to her that due to my trips, business trips, because I work here in California, in Washington, D.C., as well as in Canada as a journalist and having my media holding company, I cannot attend August 4th meeting with you. However, I was prepared to meet with you last week or even this week, but I haven't heard back from you. That will prompt me to start a recall petition against you, Honorable Mayor, because we as voters voted you in to be wired and sit on the chair and serve the public interests. No, I mean, I don't understand. I was raised in a family of 4 senators of Armenia. And by the way, you know my brother who was an ex-senator in Armenia. You met with him last month. I know that there is a duty. I know that it's owed to the public 24/7 when the constituent is requesting for a meeting on an urgent issue.
And this case, and by the way, the second case was denied by Honorable Mr. Garcia, the city attorney, blatantly, with no reason, just bureaucratic denial. And as a journalist, I will expose widespread during my speech through the YouTube, through global media, asking investigation, audit from Washington, D.C., into my mother's cases. You are dealing with 82 years old elderly woman, ex-senator of Armenia. She was injured. She got lifetime injuries that actually required her for long-term care, for treatments, and now she's ordered by her doctors to undergo a surgery. She is about to lose her foot. We live in the country of democracy where the human rights and human factors and all values are respected. I am very proud to be an American citizen and a voter. And with all due respect to all council members, including the Mayor Sinanian and the city attorney, I'm kindly requesting you last time to give us an opportunity for a private meeting so that we may present all the facts surrounding my mother's case. Thank you for your time and all the best to you.
Thank you. And that's the last speaker of the night. What's next, Mr. Clerk?
Unless there's any new business, motion, we can entertain a motion to adjourn in.
There is none.
In the memory, move to adjourn in the memory.
And we would, before we have a motion to adjourn, I do want to remind that tonight we're adjourning in the memory of Ralph Walroth, an employee of the city of Glendale, who passed away at the age of 98. Do we have a motion?
I moved it, yeah.
Second? Seconded. We are adjourned.